So I guess first on the agenda, we should just give a brief introduction, even though people probably know us. I guess that's relevant.
Yeah.
um, my name is Dr. Allison Wiltz, but my friend Arturo could call me Allison Alley. Um, I write primarily about racism, women, culture. I try to make the connection between history and the current events that are happening now. I've written over 1,000 essays so far, and I'd like to put some of the best ones in a book. But for right now, you'll see me, and if you subscribe, you'll see me share some of my work on here as well. Your turn.
Yeah. So, a lot of people on Substack already know me, Arturo Dominguez. I write decolonized journalism, editor at the Antagonist Mag. I'm not far behind Allison on the 1,000 essays thing. I've got quite a few myself, several hundred. And yeah, a lot of people pretty much know what we discuss a lot of the things that most people don't see on the surface. And that's kind of what we're doing here today. I see Walter in the chat. Hey, Walter.
Yeah, it's always good to see Walter. Walter kind of brings us out of our shells.
Yeah. What
He's such a good
everybody
person to talk to.
Yeah, everybody loves Walter's crash outs. He's always crashing out on these live streams and
I
it,
love
it,
it.
it's justified, the crashing out. He gets everybody else crashing out too and that's what it's about, right? We're supposed to be
Well, you
angry.
can see that. And you can see that in his writing too, the way it builds up. Like it's building up and it's like this type of righteous on guess righteous indignation at
Mhm.
what a lot of the white Americans, white and wealthy Americans are up to.
Yeah, yeah, it's just crazy. When we talk about the white wealthy Americans, it's hard not to go back to the Epstein files. And I know
Yeah.
Epstein is getting redundant, but like all this new information that's come out is really troubling. And one of the things Marlon and I discussed this last night was how it really highlighted how they see us. How
Right.
they see just anybody, poor white people, black people, Latinos, like they just look down on all of us as if we're just nothing to them. They've talked
I
about
know.
in a lot of those emails, they talked about how do we get rid of the poor, and it's
Creepy.
right. It's really creepy, and it's you want to get rid of the poor and support people, right? Provide
Right.
services, like end
Right.
poverty. You want to get rid of poor
Yes.
people, end poverty. But yeah, we talk about these white wealthy elites, and someone always points out how like the six major media news organizations or all the major media news organizations are owned by like six corporations. So we get drowned out really easily by white centered reporting, white centered focus on issues. Like we know a lot of people recently came to the conclusion that when politicians are talking about the working class, they're talking about white people.
They
And
figured
it's
them
like
out.
we've always known that. We've
Yes.
always
We've been
known
saying
that.
that for generations.
Yes. And then it's just
Yeah.
like they're just now coming
Frustrating.
around to, I guess working class means white people. Duh. Yeah. Hello. Like
I
you never
know.
when have they ever referred to Latinos as working class, black people, indigenous people as working class? Like they never have.
They're too
Okay.
busy trying to call us lazy, so they never acknowledge the fact that we are hardworking people. And also just, like, separate from that, like, it's so I feel like we've learned enough as, like, a human species to understand that we shouldn't, be assessing value based off of the work that someone could produce. So it's like, I'm 37, one day I'll be 67. I don't know what
Yeah.
I'll be able to do. I'll be lucky to live that long, but, in other words, like, we have to stop like, it's like almost like America like breeds this ableism where we're assessing someone by their value, and therefore, when it comes to children, when it comes to disabled people who can't, I guess, work, then it becomes like an oppression of them. And I will also say it's really weird how people are just so willing to sidetrack Donald Trump's harming children. But to
Yeah.
me, it ties back to the church because in the church there's like this culture of sexual abuse and of the church kind of not going after those people, of forgiving them and allowing them to remain in our community. And I feel like, while Donald Trump is being doing this in the government and not the church, it's still like this. It feels like that created the society in which hurting children will be accepted. I feel like it's too readily accepted.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. The whole prayer breakfast the other day, so many big name evangelicals were there. No boycotts, nobody speaking out, nobody saying anything. And it just goes to show how, like, when it comes to religious extremists, how far they're willing to go to cover up stuff just
yes,
so they can continue to push their agenda. And at the end of the day, I see that prayer breakfast and I look at all these evangelicals and I'm like, your agenda ain't worth a shit if
right,
you're sitting here, entertaining a pedophile. Like, what the hell?
right.
What is
Well, it's
wrong with
like,
you?
you know me, I'm not religious, but one thing I will say is that the story of Jesus is not the story of a capitalist. I
Mhm.
mean, dude wanted
Right.
to take bread and give it to everybody. He didn't say, "Let me start a sandwich business." He said, all y'all get food, all y'all get fish, free healthcare, all these things. And it's like the Republicans are so-called the religious party, family values, but they didn't stand in the way of an innocent black man being executed. So you're not pro-life, you're pro-white life. You are white supremacists.
Yeah.
and and they don't value women. They just see them as a commodity in the same way, as breeders. And that's why the white men are always complaining that white women aren't having enough babies for them. Notice how they're not being, notice it's not like a revolution of let's treat women right. Let's talk to them and see
Right.
what their needs are. What kind of support do they need to feel comfortable bringing life into this society? They just come at it from a very like colonial version of like women should bear children, like with no consideration of how expensive it is, no consideration for the health risk. And it's very oppressive. And Trump kind of has filled a lot of people with um, what I'd say is like pessimism. Like we're
Yeah.
just so exhausted. I mean, we've been dealing with this individual in terms of a politician since what, 2015, 2016. We're getting to the point of 10 years of this country's news cycle being almost solely dominated by everything Donald Trump does. I mean, just yesterday, you can't even take a nap because the second you take a nap and wake up, he's done something else wrong. Like
Right.
he reposted this image that was portraying Michelle Obama and Barack Obama as monkeys. And it's like, it's just so annoying. This is why I just block a bunch of white people when they do this silly stuff. Like, they're like, "Oh, but he's not racist. You don't know." And it's like, you guys are sick. You guys are
Yeah.
sick. I'm
Yeah.
so done with it. That's why I'm like, I'm accepting that those people are lost causes. I'm not a bodhisattva. I don't believe I can save everyone. I don't believe it's my responsibility to save everyone. I
Right.
believe that I definitely am someone that believes in like the concept of democracy because I believe when people have power that we'll make the best decisions, but we live in a society where there's voter suppression, where there's gerrymandering, where there's all these things happening that are like drowning out the voices of the people. I know the Washington Post just fired a third of their staff. Now, me,
Going crazy.
I've never even submitted a story to them, so I always admired the paper, but I'm so used to people like us just being silenced or let me guess, you're going to let the email with my draft sit in your inbox and not even dignify it with a response. So I tend to focus more on independent journalism because it feels like even though it's really fun, like it would be great to get picked up by big
Sure.
publications. But
Yeah.
at what cost, right? At the cost of our message, at the cost of the timing in which you're trying to release information to the public. And I definitely see independent media growing like in this moment. I mean, just look at Don
Right.
Lemon.
Right.
I personally think that I think he was attacked not just because he was black, um, but also because he was an independent journalist. You see,
Right.
my belief is that if Don Lemon was literally still 100% employed by CNN, I don't think they would have tried it. The reason why
Right.
they tried it is because they were trying to kind of like infringe upon our First Amendment right to be citizen journalists. Like I don't need to be hired by a company to become a journalist. I have to simply decide that I want to take an interest in human beings and in the stories that we have to tell and the stories we have to share. And
Right.
I don't know. I think that his victory, which I know over time it will be a victory, is good. But I worry about those of us that are lesser known.
Yeah.
What happens when we get snatched up? You
Right.
know, um, where's going to be the outrage from the people that don't have a million followers? Because like obviously Don Lemon is like a household name. Like,
Right.
what happens when journalists that are lesser known are targeted for covering this type of stories?
Right, right. Like they arrested Don Lemon, and they wouldn't have if he was at CNN because one, they could just make a phone call to CNN to rein him in.
Yeah,
They don't wanna deal with CNN's legal department, you know what I mean?
yeah,
CNN is already appeasing the Donald Trump administration, so they went after Lemon because he's independent. The thing about Don Lemon is, he has access, he has money, he knows the right people to fight back, things like that. The other independent journalists that were rounded up with him don't have that, and like you're saying,
right,
Don Lemon could defend himself, and how are you or me who struggle to get by,
right,
being smaller creators, how are we gonna defend ourselves? And,
right.
Substack has a legal thing where if somebody wants to try to take down one of your articles that they'll defend it, right? They'll,
Hmm.
fight to keep it up. But it doesn't go as far as, like, getting you out of jail. It doesn't go as far as you know
Right.
what I mean? That little legal protection is very small, very minimal, and, had they snatched me up, I'd be sitting in jail because I wouldn't be able to bail out, you
Right.
know what I mean? So
Exactly. And then when you do go to jail, then everything else because then you get behind on things. Now you're behind on, insurance or, paying light bills, all these types of things. So um but I feel like it's important for like I guess I just say that because I feel like it's important for us to acknowledge what we're risking.
yeah,
We're literally risking our freedom to talk about these types of things during the Trump administration. I know in the state of Louisiana, he's already requested, and because we have a Republican governor, they complied in giving him our voter rolls.
yeah, they did
So
that here
now
too.
Donald Trump has the list of all the Democrats here, like, and so I think that there's like like I guess moderate Democrats, right? I feel like one of the things they've gotten wrong about this, two things, right? When the immigrants, like when all the shit hit the fan initially, they actually were telling people this is not our fight, right? That was that was like the official line is you guys, if you go out and protest, he's gonna declare martial law. And so as a result of that, black people don't go out there, stay home, right? And it was like a very weird like rhetoric, but it was a strong rhetoric. Like I heard it from a lot of people time and time again. There's something switched. Once they started seeing black people getting hacked up, it switched to some people saying, I still don't feel like we should be protesting, but this is certainly something that affects us. And, I would say that, for those of us that have been writing about this whole time, we've been warning everyone that if any of us are, if any of our rights are violated, then all of our rights are
Right,
jeopardized.
right,
And white people, for example, I think they they inadvertently expose something about themselves that they really do struggle. Like we already knew this, but it was like a reminder. They struggle with selective empathy. When Renee Good was killed and when Alex Preddy was killed, they were talking about that as if it was domestic terrorism. They did
yep,
not use that language when Keith Porter was killed. Another point that I felt like I had to whack the Democrats on because, I voted as a Democrat, so I get to whack you guys. Like I'm part of
right,
this. You know, um, one of the things they got wrong too is some of the white Congress people who are saying defund ICE were explicitly against defund the police.
right,
Now, as we know in this country, Black people and Latino men are disproportionately impacted by police brutality. Last year, police killed at least 1,200 people, according to mappingpolice.org. So we know that policing is violent. Policing in of itself is the descendant of slave patrols and it's a violent system. But yet when we wanted to try to take away some of the money from police stations, reallocate it to other departments like healthcare, public works, all these things, they rejected it. So it makes me not trust a lot of these white liberals because essentially if a white woman is getting shot in the face, you're going to say that's a step too far. If a white man is getting 10 times shot into him, you're going to say that's a step too far. But if a Black person and Latinos are going to continue to be killed in ICE custody, continue to be killed in police custody, then they're okay with that. They're okay
Right.
with a status quo in which we continue to have to worry about if our loved ones are ever going to make it home. So then it kind of brings me into this thing of, even though a lot of people are really big and loud about the things that they don't agree with, how willing are these same white people that are saying defund ICE? How willing are y'all to revisit the table in terms of addressing state sanctioned violence as not just the type that affects your people, but the type that affects all Americans? And keep in mind, out of that 1,200, because a lot of people don't seem to know, what disproportionate means. Just because Black people and Latino are more likely to be victims of police brutality doesn't mean white people aren't also victims. So when people are like, they had this one white woman on Thread, she said, let's just go back to regular police brutality.
Yeah.
And I'm like, white people were getting killed too under regular police brutality. Like, I don't understand. It makes me kind of feel like those people just need to be quiet. Like, if you don't care about this whole picture, then I don't want to hear you say fuck ICE. I don't want to hear you say fuck ICE when in reality you would vote to fund ICE. You would give the police more money.
Right, and that's the thing, like, I keep trying to tell everybody that just because you're liberal or just because you voted for a Democrat or just because you've never used the N-word does not make you not racist.
Bingo.
Racism knows racism knows no political party. It has
Right.
no political affiliation.
Right.
You know, when it comes to voting, people vote their interests, right? If they wanna try to take better care of the community, that's what they're gonna vote for. That doesn't make them non-racist or anti-racist, right? I mean,
Right.
there
Absolutely.
we see it all the time when, you see these NIMBY people, the not in my backyard people, go to city council and, they might be liberal, they might be progressive, but they're protesting because they don't want low-income housing anywhere near their house or mixed income housing or, then it's gonna devalue the
It's
property, it's gonna bring
disgusting.
crime, and yeah, it's gross. And at the end of the day, it's like you said, white people, poor white people mostly, are the ones that are killed by police. And yeah, more white people per year are killed because there's more white people in this country. But
Exactly. And that's
but
the
when
part
you
they
can
don't seem to get. You guys are
right,
victims of this too.
right,
The
and like
difference
that
is we actually care when Black people. It's like y'all had the problem with white people is like, yeah, it's selective empathy, but they also don't have sufficient empathy for themselves because ultimately they're not outraged that white people are getting killed. And you know why? Because they condition them to see them as criminal. Even before any trial takes place, they're conditioned to think that the police are correct and anyone they engage with, they're correct for. So they excuse, it's like no wonder they excuse our pain. They excuse the pain of their own people.
yeah, and I find it interesting too, when white people get mad when, Latinos or black people are out there protesting police brutality, and they're like, "You don't see us doing that," and you're really admitting something by saying that. Why
Yeah,
not?
you don't
Why are you
care.
why is it acceptable to have, state sanctioned violence in your neighborhood?
Every
Why do you
year, the police are going to kill hundreds of white people.
Right,
They're
right.
going to kill Black people, Latinos. So it's like they're killing us every year, and people want to act. People only want to react when they see it on video. So that's a problem too. Is it's like, yes, having video footage is impressive, but just think about all. I can tell you that most of the Black people I know have had a negative experience with the
Yeah,
police, and none of them that I know are recorded. So it's like people have to understand that what we see is only a small amount of what is
right.
going on. Like, you know, you people seeing Rebecca and seeing Alex being shot in that way was hard, but you notice that because there's no recording of Keith Porter being killed by off-duty ICE agent, people are not talking about that. His life doesn't matter because apparently they think that Black people, and there's also was a Latino man who that very next week was actually killed in custody. He
Yeah,
died in custody. And
yeah,
it's just like, I just feel like white people have to really tune into what empathy is and understand that it's not just about being soft. It's about it's about like caring. It's about the power that we harness as a society when we choose to care about
right.
one another. And like the conservatives and fascists in general, they are invested in kind of making us feel that we should only care about what goes on in our own household. They're trying to detach us from the society. And all that does is that makes us weak, because then when they do crack that white man's neck, or they do strangle that black man or shoot that white woman, when they do those things, I just feel like there's like a conditioning that's happening to us. Like, I don't feel like people are angry enough, and I don't feel like their anger was sustained enough. I mean, they literally shot that white woman in the face. They literally
Yeah.
shot out. They were shooting him 10 times. He was the only reason his body was moving is because it was convulsing from being shot.
Yeah.
And I feel like if that doesn't make white people, it concerns me that their takeaway is all we have to do is just not fund ICE as much. Well, even if you gave them less money, as long as they can still function as a department, they have the money to have guns. So it's like, keep in mind, taxpayers paid for the bullets that shot Alex Petty. Taxpayers paid for the bullets that killed Rebecca Good. You know,
Right.
and also, not to mention, there are 1,200 migrants that are missing from Alligator Alcatraz, which surprised me because even though I know they were harming migrants, simply not accounting for where those people are, I definitely think there needs to be a reckoning. I think that Congress, a lot of people in Congress, they have failed to live up
Yeah.
to what they should in terms of protecting the interests and the rights of the people. I think that and I definitely don't know if the Democrats are going to be able to get over their white selves to fix the problem, because we see what they're doing to Jasmine Crockett. I mean, here you have this firebomb, this person that actually is willing to speak truth to power. Of course, no politician is perfect, but I definitely think she's more willing to say what they're doing is wrong, and fight for what's right. And it's like, here you are, these white people in the Democratic Party in Texas that are saying, "Oh, well, a black woman can't win, so that's her excuse to support a white man." It's like, okay,
That that
we
that that comes from James Carville. James Carville,
exactly. I can't stand
he
his ass.
right, he started working with the Tallarico campaign right after Jasmine Crockett decided to enter the race and Allred backed out, and ever since then, it's, they wanna say, "We need to avoid culture wars, we need to get away from identity politics," but in the same breath, they're saying, "We need a white man to win Texas."
He needs to
I
leave. I can't wait till his day is done. He is one of the worst Louisiana pundits that
Yeah,
always comes out. He always has something stupid to say. He wants the Democratic Party to be what it was before the Civil Rights Act passed, because he's old enough and that's what he remembers. He remembers when the Democratic Party was more so white and they were not for civil rights. That's the
right.
party that he wants it to return to. And it just goes to show you that even though these white liberals don't like getting their ass kicked by liberal, they don't not like it enough to join with us,
Right, and the
apparently.
thing that everybody is disregarding is the last time a white man ran, challenged a Latino in the Senate in Texas, the white man lost to a wannabe
Because
white
Texas,
Latino.
because like I know, because my dad lived in Texas for a long time, and that's where I used to go spend summers. Texas is a very racially diverse place. Like when I was in the Girl Scouts in Texas, there were black girls, Latina, and it was like a couple of white people. Like white people are not a majority in the urban areas in Texas. Like if you
No.
go to Houston,
Yeah.
San Antonio, Austin, like in the heart of these cities is very diverse. And I mean, if you just look at the proximity to Mexico, like
Right.
Latinos are supposed to have a lot of political power in Texas.
Right, in
And
the Southwest,
yeah,
right, yeah, and, like, in Te
exactly.
we're 41% Latino, 40 just under 40% white, and I can't remember the black population, but, like, somebody said the other day, we're like the blackest state in the union, and that wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah,
We're a huge state,
yeah. Especially
so it
when you look
doesn't
at Harris County.
Harris County in particular, that's where I live, and it's super diverse, and,
It
like,
is.
if you look in my neighborhood, we're kind of in the suburbs, and there's more non-white people than white people around here in this
Right,
little pocket neighborhood that we live in, and it's cool, there's an Indian family down the road, Mexican folks across the street, black folks across the street, black folks in my house, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
we're, like, really diverse around here, and it's funny because, especially in the suburbs, like, you have those white people that will never make eye contact with you, and they just walk right by. And it's
I'm
funny, I mean,
screaming.
we'll be standing in the front yard, and it'll be like me and the Mexican guy from across the street and the Indian family, we'll be standing there talking, and some white dude walks their dog by doesn't wave, doesn't say a word, and we're just like we just kinda giggle and like, "Whatever." And it's just stupid, right? It's
It
stupid. Like,
is.
why aren't you gonna say, "Hey, how y'all doing?" and just keep walking? Like, what's
They can't stand living by us. They had a
it's
white lady
weird.
in our neighborhood, I told you about that, used to always
Yeah,
call the police on us when we used the pool. And,
yeah,
like, right across from my mom's house, you can see the pool. It's a community pool, and everyone that lives in the community has a key. So it's like, I have a key, and I'm a lifeguard, so technically me hanging out at the pool kinda technically keeps other people safe because I would help them if they
right.
needed to. And it's like they just saw black kids hanging out in the pool, they just kept wanting to call the police. And we were so young, instead of like asserting our right to be there, we would just run. We would scatter, hide in the bushes, everything because we didn't know what was going to happen if the police came. And we're like, oh my God, especially if your mom or dad is not home and you're
Yeah.
like, I don't want to deal with these people alone. And so luckily that white woman don't live here. But then I also had a one white neighbor that was really nice. And she actually uh she had basically she burned down her house and my mom's house caught on fire. So she doesn't live by us anymore. But she she was really kind. You know what I'm saying? But like the other white lady in the neighborhood, she really didn't want black kids around. And yeah.
See, like and that's the thing, like, the nicer white folks are the ones that we remember, you know what I mean?
You for real.
We blow off the racist ones, we don't give a damn,
Right. Because
like
they're so used to
right,
it.
right, and it's just such a most of the time, it's just a real quick interaction, and then you just kinda brush it off, and you ain't worried about it. I'm worried
Yeah.
about the old white folks across the street and my old my super Christian neighbors who are really nice, you know? Maybe they're MAGA, I don't know, but they're super
Right.
Christian, and they're the nicest people in the world, and their kids come and hang out with my grandkids, they're all about the same age, and, you know, we enjoy each other's company. There's no issues as far as that goes, and then we also have the guy that right after the election decided to put a MAGA sign in his front yard, and everybody was
Mm-mm.
just like, "You dick, like, why? You won, get
Nah.
over it." You know what I
Now
mean?
see,
Like
I see New Orleans don't play that. Like if you step outside of New Orleans, you're gonna see MAGA. But it's like this is the one place they can't infiltrate because you have to think about it. Most of the money comes. We have money from the port, and then we have money from the red light district, the French Quarter. So it's
yeah,
like if you're attracting people to drink and engage in debauchery, it's not going to be. Even the Catholic Church left New Orleans, which I thought was funny. And now the only messed up thing is I wish the city would have took those properties because the church left and now those properties are just dilapidated,
yeah,
graffiti, people living on the steps and stuff like that. And I feel like those churches should have been turned into community centers so they could have value. Because
yeah,
honestly, I have my problem with the churches anyway, because it's like we need more community centers where everyone is welcome, not just you're welcome if you believe three, like
right,
whatever a list of things is. Like you should be able to come in here and get like a relief from the cold or relief from the heat, talk to people and that sort of things. And churches maybe used to fulfill that at some point in the South, but I don't see it. But I
yeah,
don't know.
so somebody in the comments is asking how we feel about Colin Allred. In Texas, I'll tell you how we feel about Colin Allred. Mostly, he's the centrist Democrat everybody's afraid of. No, he represents the status quo. You know,
You can
Texas,
kind of tell. I ain't gonna
right,
lie, no shade, but one look
right,
at him and you can kind of tell.
yeah, and I mean, you know, he used a lot of anti-trans dog whistles in his campaigning last time. That was a huge turnoff. You know, the thing is when you look at Texas, the Democrats that are elected are all progressive, and that's because
Right,
this is an oil-rich state. Economic populism is the only way to win an election here.
right,
You know, the only times like Henry Cuellar, for example, he's anti-abortion, pro-ICE, pro-border patrol, all this stuff, but the only reason he got elected was because Pelosi and Hakeem Jeffries tipped the scale during the primaries in his favor over a
right,
progressive who was kicking his ass. And if it wasn't for all
right,
that money and power and stuff to put behind Henry Cuellar, he would never have won. And
right.
that's essentially the case. Like when it comes to Texas, we don't want Nancy Pelosi digging into our politics or Hakeem Jeffries. We're worried about Texas. We're worried about
Right,
Texas. We do
right.
politics
Local elections, yeah.
right, like, we do politics dirty. Dirty, dirty,
Right.
dirty. We are some of the dirtiest people. I mean, the mud
Us
is
too. Y'all right
clinging.
next to us. It's
Right.
wild down here. Like,
Yeah, yeah. So
I'm talking about
it
mayors like running for office. I mean, some of the people running for mayor had criminal records, straight up, for
yeah.
stealing money. You know?
Yeah, yeah, and like Louisiana, right, where New Orleans is what, like 20 or 30% of the whole state's revenue by
Yep.
itself, and
Yep.
then it's probably the most oppressed city in the state. It's the same
Bingo.
way with all the power centers where all the money is made, like Houston, San Antonio, Dallas. Those are the diverse communities, and those are the ones that are always targeted by Republican leadership.
And they're the ones that generating the wealth for the entire state.
Right, those are we're the people who put the money in the coffers, and,
Right.
because, some of these little towns that I drive through when I'm in East Texas, population is like 15 or, 1,200. They're not putting in what we're putting in, you know what I mean? Like, it takes a lot of
Right.
those little towns to just even come close to a Houston. So, yeah, it's just interesting how, they constantly target the majority non-white communities, and that's where the majority of their income is coming from. And
Yeah, like New Orleans just for Mardi Gras, one festival, we rake in on average $900 million.
that's crazy.
$900 million for an event that lasts pretty much like a couple of days. Like
Right.
most people that are not from here don't like Mardi Gras is the whole month. Like we celebrate, we have parades, but most people only come for like that last week, and they generate approximately 100. Like, you know what I'm saying?
That's
Um,
crazy.
it's almost $1 billion. It's 900 million. And so, but people in New Orleans are exceedingly poor. Our communities
Right.
are poor. Our communities still flood. 20 years after Katrina, the flood walls are sinking. And so we are exploited. We are generating this wealth. And I've worked in a lot of the French Quarter restaurants where it's like some of the busiest time you've ever had to work. And I mean, we're just making the wealthy people, like we're not
Yeah.
actually benefiting from it appropriately. And so, yeah. And then
It's
the Republicans
basically
say anything we want money spent on citizens, that it's a handout, when in reality, we're the ones doing the work and filling the coffers.
right, it's just another way to transfer wealth from the poor to the wealthy elites, and, based to go back to the Epstein files, we see what the wealthy elites do with that money,
It's really
and
disgusting.
it really is disgusting,
I can
and
see why he killed himself or why someone killed him because, um, like, first of all, it's crazy that he did these things, but having to having everyone know about this. I mean, you have pictures of him with children,
oh my
not like young, not like barely legal type girls. I'm talking about kids that are shorter, like, shorties, babies. And it's just devastating how many people let these kids down, you
yeah.
know? And you have like all these people that are in the Epstein files. Now, I understand that some people are in there because they're a celebrity and they know the same people, but there's a lot of people in there that were engaging in the sexual violence against children. And even Donald Trump has been accused of this in the Epstein files. And that's something that I guess is not going to get properly investigated because he controls the Department of Justice.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
it's
and
sad.
what's obvious about that is, you look at Europe right now, and there are a lot of big name people, high ranking government officials who are, resigning and being pulled from their posts or being investigated or being arrested. And there's all these things going down. Not one single person in the United States has experienced anything like that. Nobody has nobody has resigned. Nobody's being criminally charged. Even I think the
Right.
DOJ said recently that they weren't going to be bringing any new charges related to the Epstein case, and that's just
Yikes.
right, and that's just ridiculous. I mean, Bill Barr is in there. Bill Barr was the last person to see Jeffrey Epstein alive in jail. And the next day he was found dead, and
Right.
it's like when you say, "Yeah, I can see
That
why he
was
was killed
suspicious.
or committed suicide,"
Right. That's
there's
why I
always
say either or. That's why I say either or, because first of
right, right.
the dirt they have on them is bad enough to make anybody kill themselves. Because now you can see why the prince stepped down. You know how
Yeah,
he stepped down from, because, and I mean, I'm surprised he didn't off himself, because the stuff that they have in there is damning. And it's like, I definitely think it is possible somebody killed him because because they could have been trying to protect Donald Trump or other powerful men and women.
yeah.
They were trying to protect those people, and they didn't want him to to talk. But then part of me feels like when I saw some of the pictures, part of me feels like, oh yeah, I could see why you killed yourself because it's bad enough you did these things, but I don't think that many people could psychologically most people that harm people never want to sit through hearing people say what they did. And so I
Right.
feel like I couldn't see a version of him sitting in court and listening to each of those people that are surviving, and so yeah, even if they didn't kill him, he was probably not going to want to live. I mean,
Yeah.
and to be honest, Donald Trump, if he didn't have the political power, I think he would be whining like a little baby right now for being. He just know, and I think this is a really sick country because they're protecting a man. They're protecting a man that hurts children, and
Yeah.
it's like as an adult, I feel like every adult should feel some type of sense of responsibility for how can we let this monster get in office in a way to where this is going to continue. And I'll just say this. And tell me what you think about this. Do you think that he is going to leave office in 2020? What, 2028 is when we get rid of him? Maybe.
If he survives that long, I doubt it. I
I
think
feel
he's
like
gonna
they're
try
going
to
to keep
stay.
him. I feel like they're going to treat him like Frankenstein. They're going to keep him. They're going to keep him ticking.
I think that's what's going on now. I think if he wasn't in the White House, he probably would have keeled over and died, but he has, like, some of the best healthcare in the world. He probably has medications and treatments we've never even heard of, you know what I mean? So
With that hand, you saw his hand, how it was
yeah,
bruised, and
yeah.
that could indicate some type of circulation disorder or
Well, they
some type
say
of
somebody
clotting issue.
yeah, somebody was saying he's getting some type of shots, I don't know, that have to do with dementia. I'm not
Okay.
exactly sure, but yeah,
And
you
there is
see
no cure for dementia, so maybe it's a
no.
good time for him to retire and focus on yourself, focus on your weird family, and try not
Yeah.
to bury any more wives on the golf course.
Right, and one of right, that shit's just weird, that's weird, but
It is
but
weird.
one of the biggest hypocrisy, right? So, like, I keep seeing a lot of people, "So, the QAnon people were right," right? No, they weren't, okay? So,
No, no indeed.
obviously, QAnon was an op to try to take whatever Trump and Epstein were doing and put it on Democrats, right? Democrats are demonic, Democrats are eating babies, and all these things. Well, it turns out,
Y'all are the
like
ones
like
doing those
racism
things.
like
Yep,
racism, this knows
they
no political
deflect.
party, right?
That's
So
right.
now there's the hypocrisy, right, from QAnon. Everybody thought it was Hillary Clinton was demonic. Hillary Clinton was eating babies, all these things, right? Well, now Trump is the one doing it, and now they're still supporting him. So, like,
Right. So
it
it was never about protecting kids.
never about the kids, and I said that then. I'm like, "This is all bullshit. This y'all aren't doing this for kids, because
No,
look at
they're
how
not.
many of you are being arrested for messing with kids."
I know. Look at you saw that MAGA get his. Oh,
Yes.
the
Like
the little kids beat him, and because MAGA always want to put hands on children. I don't
yeah,
know what y'all mama taught y'all, but my mama taught me, don't go around starting fights. But if somebody puts their hands on you, and that man put his hands on a young girl, and they whooped his ass. That was
yeah, like
glorious.
I couldn't I couldn't help but laugh because I don't know if you've seen that Step Brothers movie, I'm pretty sure everybody has.
Yes,
When the
yes,
little kids beat the shit out of them at the park, that's
yes.
what I thought of. That's exactly what I thought of, and then
Somebody said they beat him like Mojo Jojo.
yeah, that's funny too. What's crazy is another guy in Texas, old white man, gets out of his truck, tried to confront a bunch of students.
Um,
It was, somewhere in Central Texas again, and them kids just shouted him down, and he turned around and went back to his
he
truck
was
and
like, he
fuck.
said, "Uh oh," he said, "Uh oh,
Yeah,
I'm in over my depths."
right, and there's this thing, like, you see these guys all the time, right? The obsessively online old dudes. They
Yes,
come out there, they throw the N word around, they get knocked the fuck out, and
right.
it's because
Yeah,
they're
every
in the
time
right, they're in the echo chamber. They're
they
in the
are
comment section where everybody's agreeing with them, and then they
right.
go out in the world and they think everybody's gonna agree with them, and that's just not reality, you
And it's
know?
a lack of respect because those are not your kids. And
Right,
not only are they not your kids, but kids are citizens too, and kids are people too. And they have First Amendment rights.
right,
Kids can say whatever they want. If they want to say F you MAGA, get out my face, that is their right. You don't have the right to put your hands on them because you don't think that they can talk. You need to distance yourself from kids.
Yeah, and
What makes you think you could confront somebody's kids without the parents around, you coward? You
right,
know what I
like,
mean?
you get in my kid's face, we're gonna have a problem, big time.
I dare those
Dare
MAGA
you.
do that in the morning when the parents are making drop offs. Do it when the
Yeah,
parents are right there and see how
right.
see how that goes.
And I also see a lot of people, like, how can parents let their kids do this? And I'm like, "I'm sorry. Are
Protest?
are parents supposed to, like, lock their kids in the basement and chain
I'm
them down?"
screaming.
You right? Like, come on, man, like,
Kids
kids can
protesting is a
see
good thing because it shows that they understand they do have a right
right,
to
they can
express
see and
themselves and
hear
they too have a voice.
right, they can see and hear everything we see and hear, and, kids aren't, um how do you say it, corrupted basically by our
Right,
society, right?
right,
They're not yet corrupted by normalized police brutality and
right,
normalized hate, and so when they see these things, they get up and they speak up, and you can fault the parents all you want, but what I see are a bunch of kids who were raised right,
right. Me
you know
too.
right? Because
And
if
they
those
stood up for one another instead of them being
right,
scared, like, oh my God, that's an adult. What are we gonna do? I'm glad that the kids didn't let that girl get hit, that they bound together. They bound
yeah,
together and they decided that if you hit one of us, that is equivalent to hitting all of us, and you're about to get this issue. They beat him until he went into the truck. I just could not stop laughing looking at him because once he realized, like at first they was hitting him so much he couldn't even get up. And it was just so funny. And then when he finally did get up, he was like making it to the truck. And I'm not gonna lie, the kids are good kids because it's like they let you get into you. They didn't have to let you get back to your vehicle. They could have beat your ass till the cows came home.
right,
They, and also you weren't bleeding. You know what I'm saying? Like it
yeah,
could have been worse, dude. Take this as a warning. Now he's going to jail for assaulting a child. Take this as a warning. Leave kids alone. Leave kids alone. And also just like first of all, MAGA, y'all are the ones whose kids are shooting up these schools. So
yeah,
instead of coming to talk to people's kids who are protesting like the unjust treatment of themselves and others, you need to teach your kids that shooting people because they don't like the school they go to is not acceptable. Y'all need to get your own house in order. That's why y'all birth rate is declining because y'all mean to women and y'all not raising your kids right. So instead of riding around with your little stupid ass hat trying to target children who are protesting, go home and worry about your own kids. Learn to bake some fucking bread. Learn to do
right,
something useful. Cause like I feel like MAGA is the descendants of the Klan. And
yeah,
the Klan is the descendants of the Confederacy. So as far
yep,
as I'm concerned, they're bad people who oppose civil rights and want to maintain white supremacy at the cost of the very country. And it's just the same as with the Civil War because those fools, like I was reading this book From Here to Equality by William Darity, and one of the things that he talked about in there was how America had so many opportunities to do the right thing, right? But didn't. And I think that what we're enduring now is because uh, they failed to properly punish the Confederacy. And
I
now,
agree,
as a result, these people have more political power than they should. That's why we have, for example, the Electoral College. If white people didn't interrupt the Reconstruction era with Jim Crow, we would have had to logically get rid of the Electoral College because it's a byproduct of slavery. And it was created to ensure that white people in the South, despite having lower population levels, would have more political power. And
yeah,
so, and yeah, you can argue that Trump technically, according to what everyone says, won the vote last time, won the popular vote last time, but the first time he did not. And to be clear, that is the presidency in which allowed him to put 3 Supreme Court justices on the
yeah,
bench. So it's tied to slavery because you don't get him being allowed to put those 3 Supreme Court justices on the bench without the Electoral College,
right,
And so that's why I feel like white liberals, some of them are well-meaning, but until they're willing to actually understand that the problems America faces are systemic, right? Like how Dr. King talked about, we need a radical redistribution of power. That's
right,
referring to social, economic, and political power. In order for us to have a nation that is great, which of course, who knows if that'll ever happen, it would actually have to come from rejecting the racism in our society,
right,
rejecting any systems that promote inequity, sexism, transphobia, homophobia,
right,
xenophobia, Islamophobia,
right, and
anti-Semitism, all
to
these
really
different things.
right, and to really try to make progress, there has to be sacrifice, right? So, there is such a thing as bloodless revolutions, right? Where you can, maybe handful of people died or whatever, but there's no such thing as a revolution that doesn't inflict pain, right? So
Right.
even the people pushing for change or for a revolution or something
Right.
that you have to sacrifice. And I think that's where a lot of people get into this conundrum where they just don't care, because they're
Right.
comfortable, they're fine in their life, and, you look at the supposed racial reckoning in 2020, right? I call them the civil rights protests of 2020 because that's what they were,
Right. I like
and
that. That's a good way to describe it.
everybody was on the same page about police brutality and police having too much money and all these things. And then by the time Biden was elected, he's all, I'm going to refund the police, and they
Yeah.
were never defunded. And then everybody
Yeah.
just quit talking about it.
They
And
did.
what we're seeing today with ICE is the natural
It's the
progression of
consequences.
is a consequence of ignoring the police brutality from 6 years ago. And I find it, sometimes I wonder if people would have even cared about George Floyd's death had it not been for the pandemic, had people not
Right.
been locked in their house, you
Exactly.
know?
It, like, forced to kind of think about something rather than just going, like, pushing forward with all the things they normally would have to do.
Right, right, and I think that's kind of where we are. There was a lot of fake allyship in 2020.
There
There
was.
was the corporatization of Black Lives Matter, where all these
Yeah.
corporations trying to put money in it, trying to act like they were quote unquote woke, and all these things, and it just all just went away, and here we are. Now we're seeing ICE do it to Latinos, and I saw a lot of what you were saying about, some Black folks saying that this isn't our fight, and I saw most of that from FBA and ADOS, things like that, those groups, but I gotta tell you, Black folks in Houston didn't get that memo because they've been in
Right.
ICE's right, they've been trying to protect their neighbors because here, unlike you see all these issues between the Latino community and Black folks, like in LA, right? A lot of that
Right.
comes from the prison systems where Latinos were kinda doing business with white supremacists and all
Right.
this stuff, and that's where a lot of that comes from. But what happens in LA is not necessarily the same as thing that's happening in Chicago, definitely not
Right.
in Houston, definitely not where I grew up in Union City and parts of New York where Latinos and Black people are, like, intermixed, like, right next door.
Right.
Like, I have 2 Mexican neighbors right across the street, a white dude, a Black dude across the street, like, this is what our community looks like here, and
Right.
like, I'm even if ICE came down our street right now, I guarantee you everybody would be hitting the alarms on their cars, making noise, like, letting everybody know, like, they're coming,
Right.
and that's just kind of what you see here, and like I said,
I
like,
feel like
Black
we need more. I feel like we need more resistance. I feel like we need more resistance down here because the way it is in Louisiana, like, people are so used to being oppressed that a
Yeah,
lot of people feel hopeless and they don't fight. And
yeah,
they like, we don't like it's not customary. Like, a lot of times if somebody sees you getting hacked up from the police, they're actually gonna keep driving because they're afraid.
yeah,
They're afraid they're gonna get pulled in. And it's like, I can't explain it. This is why when I went to Puerto Rico, I love seeing them, get hypey and protest and stick together, because with New Orleans, and we were just talking about this the other day with some of our friends, we're like, when it comes to Mardi Gras, when it comes to a second line, when it comes to parties, New Orleans people are there in a heartbeat.
right.
And we just need that same type of motivation towards advancing civil rights. Now, this week, I actually met with an organization,
Oh, yeah.
Universal Negro Improvement Association. And actually, it was founded by Marcus Garvey
Wow.
100 years ago. And um, I just started meeting with them. But one of the things I want to pose to them, because the way that they're a Pan African organization, they're Garveyites. So um, I was talking to them about the FBA and ADOT thing and stuff like that. And I was like, groups like this are important because we actually support Black people throughout the diaspora. And
Right.
the president was kind of breaking it down, and he said, like, in terms of Black people on a global setting, we actually I think he said something about we're like 1.8 or 1.9 billion, and he was like comparing us to other groups and saying that actually, African people, Black people throughout the globe, when we combine ourselves throughout the diaspora, we do represent a mighty nation, if that makes
You
any sense.
do. Yeah, yeah.
And he was just like, we have to tap into that and saying that if Africa is stronger, then all of us could be in turn stronger in terms of our geopolitical context. Like, if an Italian comes to America and let's say the police cracks him in the head, the Italian government is gonna be mad.
Yeah.
If a British person goes to Canada and the Canadian police beat his ass, the British are gonna say, do not do that to our people. But if a Black person is hurt in America, if a Black person is hurt in the Caribbean, if a Black person is hurt in South America, then Africa is not powerful enough to say they're too economically dependent upon Europeans to say, no, what you're doing is literally like a crime against humanity. What you're doing is a war crime. You are oppressing people that have been brought to this country under duress. You are keeping their descendants at a low social, economic, political level, and you are oppressing them. And so I kind of want to talk to them because a lot of people in the group are like significantly older. In fact, some of the members were actually there. So the elders there spoke with the elders that were there the day that Marcus Garvey was deported from New Orleans. So they're
Really?
trying to get a plaque there. And they're also trying to organize an event to celebrate like his legacy. But I think it's really interesting in terms of talking about immigration and how Marcus Garvey was pro-Black and he was in terms of trying to connect the African diaspora together and he was deported. And it's like, even though this happened 100 years ago, Black people that are immigrants are still dealing with this today. Now, as you know, as you stated, FBA and ADOS, it's very unfortunate because, like I said, I agree with those groups on everything but the xenophobia. So
Right.
that kind of makes it to where I can't work with those groups because it's like you will try to talk to them about it and they'll swear up and down that that's not what they're doing. And it's like, I see you on the timeline saying something about immigrants. I see you spreading this narrative that immigrants are holding us back when in reality, immigrants are not. Why we don't have reparations? Like, I feel like
Right.
they're not, I don't, and some of it is a psyop. But some of these
Right.
people have truly been convinced that immigrants harm our community and that they think that we should not be in favor of immigrants and that we should not do anything to help them. And all that does is weaken our civil rights infrastructure.
Right. And
In
like
terms of people not being willing to call that out.
right. And I don't get into these diaspora wars like that. Because they're so detrimental. Like it's just a divisive tactic. And you can't argue, you can't convince me that it's not some kind of an op, like a CIA type thing. They did this with the Black Panthers, they did this with the Young Lords. They tried to pit them against each other. They created these fake narratives and injected them into circles, and that's how they crippled a lot of these big movements.
Right.
And I see that now. I think that, this FBA ADOS thing is a product of in like the 90s and the early 2000s where Black people were becoming more connected with their African roots and their African
Yeah.
cultures, and there was this Pan-African unity going on, and I feel like this ADOS FBA thing is a pushback against that to try to break it apart. So, like,
Right.
today I saw Voto Latino, which is a Latino organization, celebrating Celia Cruz, which is a Cuban singer from back in the day, for Black History Month. And I pushed back on that a little bit because, for one, we have our Latino History Month, Hispanic Heritage Month, from September 15th to October 15th. That's where you celebrate Celia Cruz, right? Don't water down Black history with Afro-Cuban history because nationally, the United States has its own Black history, right? You guys, Black
Right.
folks were robbed of their language,
Right.
their
It's
heritage,
a
their
specific
cultures.
specific harms.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So, like, when there's Black History Month, it's for Black people in America,
Right.
not for
Right.
Afro-Cubans in Colombia or Afro-Cubans in Cuba or Afro-Colombians or anything like that. So, like, I think that when Voto Latino posts things like that, that feeds into these diaspora wars.
That does. That does because people are itching. The people that are kind of like don't like they might follow FBA people, but they don't endorse it altogether. They are watching that type of stuff and that
Yeah.
type like for example, what Oh, we didn't even talk about that. But Shabuzi, right? Because we're
Oh,
talking
yeah.
about the whole thing. So Shabuzi is a Black American, but he has Nigerian parents. And when he won the award, he said two things that kind of pissed off Black
A lot.
Americans.
Yeah.
One, you said that immigrants built this country. And two, he suggested that anyone that is hardworking would be able to access equal opportunities in America. So the first part is like I wrote about, I felt like that was not a right way to frame it.
No.
And I never really thought about it before, to be honest, until like maybe a week or two ago, because before I've heard people say that before immigrants built America. And what I always took it to mean is they are asserting the truth about what their people have contributed, right? So it's like I don't assume bad faith. So I kind of understood it to be that. But then when those same words came out of Black man, it hit me different. And I'm like, okay, see, no, now you're trying to rewrite what happened here. Because before the majority of immigrants came to this country, this was a place that was, the land was stolen from indigenous tribes and it was built economically through stolen labor. That's before 1776. You know what
Right.
I mean? And in Florida, the first slaves came in 1526. So for you to say that immigrants built America is to ignore the fact that no, you were not here before this was America. Black people, colonizers, indigenous people, and we've always had some immigrants. There's always been some Chinese, Japanese. There's always been international people coming here. But in terms of big immigration movements, no, that did not happen before this was the United States. And when you look at the fact that enslaved people built the U.S. Capitol, you can't even look at the U.S. Capitol, the Smithsonian
Right.
Institute, and also the Capitol building itself without looking at things that were created through slave labor. When you look at the dollars, if you go to the bank and you get a dollar and you get a $1 bill, $5 bill, $10 bill, $20 bill, $50 bill, $100 bill, most of those bills have slave owners on them. Like, people have to understand that, like, and that's what I felt like. It's nothing wrong with immigrants asserting you will not overlook our contributions. We make a
Right.
positive contribution to this country. But I feel like when you just say immigrants built this country, what you do is you feed the FBA and ADOS, because then they're able to say, see, they're trying to erase our history. See, they refuse to acknowledge us as foundational. And that's not exactly, I don't think it was intentional, but it was kind of hurtful, especially because he's a Black American, because on the one hand, we're being told, well, if the 14th Amendment, if you're born here, you're an American. And if you're born here and you're Black, then technically you are a Black American. But in terms of an ethnicity, he kind of exposed the difference between being a Black American because you were born here and being a Black American that's an immigrant. I used to think that there really wasn't that much difference, because in terms of how we're treated, it isn't. But in
Right.
terms of how we think and how
And your
we
history.
politically align
Right.
ourselves, it
Right.
isn't. And I'm starting to see that, like, it's messed up, because the first thing I think of when I see, and this isn't always fair, this isn't always true, because I know a couple of Black women who are country and very down to earth and very pro-Black. But let's keep it real. A lot of Black people that are engaged in the country industry, that are engaged in the punk rock industry, are more conciliatory to what white people have to say about America, to their framing of what America is. And see, as a Black American, I don't want to ostracize them. I want to educate them and have them understand, like, listen, not only is what you said not true, but let me tell you why that's harmful. Because if
Right.
you believe that immigrants, because first of all, let's look at the Statue of Liberty. The Statue of Liberty has a motto on it that
Right.
welcomes immigrants, but that was not there at first. The Statue of Liberty was a gift from the country of France to the United States to celebrate the abolition of African slavery. So everything that they think it has to do with immigrants has to do with us. And you don't get civil rights for immigrants without Black people passing the Civil Rights Act, without us passing the 14th Amendment.
Right.
And my second great grandfather, he was in Congress after the Civil War. He was born a slave, became a congressman to pass these laws that makes it to where people can even come here. Because here's the thing, like, as much as we need to fight for immigrants to be treated with dignity and respect, understand there wouldn't even be an expectation of that if it weren't for what we did. So it's like,
Right.
we have to find a way to acknowledge the contributions of immigrants, but without rewriting what happened to this country. Anyone that can, your hopes and dreams for coming here does not change the fact that if anyone who comes here, you're coming to a country that owes Black Americans. You're coming to a country that was built on slave labor and the disenfranchisement and genocide of indigenous people. And
Yeah.
that's the part people have to understand. Like, there were already people living here. There were already boundaries. There were already different tribes. There were nations. And when you say you built this country, you're ignoring the fact that it's almost like you're siding with the white people and saying that they discovered it. And then you came and helped to build it, and you're ignoring the ugly parts. You're ignoring the fact that we were forced to build this country with a gun to our head, with a noose to our neck. You're ignoring the fact that indigenous people never wanted this to be America, that they literally shed blood to try to maintain their ancestral land. So it's not okay to say you build America. It's okay to say that put respect on my name, respect my contributions, and to
Right.
to make it known. Because that's the thing. What you said about Afro Cubans, it honestly doesn't bother me if Afro Latinas are celebrated during Black History Month. Now, if you're Afro, I feel like if you're Afro Cuban and you are from the United States, but see, I think that it is because see, British have their Black History Month. So
Right.
it's like we don't Black Americans when we celebrate British Black History Month, we actually investigate who were the civil rights leaders there, what was important to their movement, what helped them make the progress in terms of abolishing slavery in the UK, passing civil rights. So we don't say, oh, well, let's focus, and that's in October. So we don't take over October and say, no, you guys in Britain, we're the only civil rights movement that matters. We're not saying we're the only ones that matter by conceding that time to them and trying to learn from what they have to say. But it feels like when it's Black Americans, we're gaslit. We're told that we're engaging in diaspora wars when in reality, we're just trying to clarify, no, you're not going to come here and rewrite the story because guess what? If you're going to come here and rewrite the story, guess who else is going to not know the truth? His children. So that
Right.
means your children are gonna think this country was built, and like that's like you're keeping yourself separate from Black Americans by doing that. See, if you were to acknowledge this country was built on stolen land with stolen labor, and we've come here in search of a better life because of the things that were laid out before us, I feel like there's nothing wrong with that. Because me personally, I want immigrants here. I want Black immigrants here. I want Black immigrants to feel that they're not going to be harmed or not hurt or not held back. But the only thing I'm never going to tolerate is historical erasure because
Right.
to get reparations passed, in order for that to pass, it's very serious. In order for that to pass, you have to have an educated population about the lasting modern day impacts of slavery. And you will never understand the lasting impacts of slavery if you deny the economic impacts of slavery. The
Right.
last thing I'll say, the first the first big business in America was slavery, not the railroads. So
Yeah.
I just want people to know I don't do it out of hate. I do it out of love because I don't want you to keep repeating the wrong thing because that's gonna give power to the hateful people that are trying to make it seem like you don't care about us.
Yeah, so the whole thing with, immigrants built this country is a tool of white supremacy because the immigrants they're referring to are the ones that came in Ellis Island, right? The ones that
Right.
built the
The creepy
skyscrapers.
ones.
Right, the ones that used to not be white, but are all of a sudden white
Well, they
nowadays.
beat each other up because they're not the right type of white. Like in New
Right.
Orleans, the biggest lynching in New Orleans, a lot of people don't know this. The biggest mass lynching was of Italian men.
Yeah.
They lynched like 10 or 12 Italian men in New Orleans because back then Italian wasn't their type of white.
Right, right, and the thing that bothers me is that a lot of Latinos bought into this immigrants built this country narrative, and they don't realize that they are promoting a white supremacist talking
Yes.
point,
Yes.
and they're overlooking the plight of other oppressed people. When it
Yes.
comes to Latinos, we come from Latin America, one of the most oppressed regions
Yes.
in the world.
Y'all's very existence is the product of the colonialization because
Right.
Latinos are a racial mix between white people from Spain and indigenous people and Africans.
Well, yeah, I mean, you have the Spain, the Spaniards, Portuguese, the French. You know what I mean? Like, Brazil's Portuguese. There's a lot of French islands. Haiti. Then you
Yes,
had the Spaniards. So there's a lot of different European ancestry in Latin America, and that's kind of what
yes,
makes us who we are. And at the end of the day, like none of us asked to be born like this. None of us asked for
Yes.
this. We are who we
Yes.
are, and that's
We
all there
are
is
who we
to it.
are.
Um, and it's what you do with your own life that makes the
Yes.
difference, you know?
I
So
agree.
I think that this is why I push back on a lot of like, I hear John Leguizamo say this all the time about immigrants built this country, and I'm like, "No, bro." Like, you
Don't say
cannot
that. Yeah.
overlook, like, the railroads were built with money from slavery, and the money
Right.
was and the land that was stolen. The stock market, your
Yes.
skyscrapers,
They
everything
use
was
black
built.
bodies as collateral for loans to establish businesses. So it's like,
Right,
and also even the white people that didn't own slavery now always like to say, "Oh, I didn't," but you benefited from an economic system that was driven
right,
on. Because, for example, in the 1860s, the state of Louisiana was creating 1/4 of the entire world's sugar.
right.
My ancestors, my second great grandfather, and my grandfather was a sugar sharecropper as a result of this system. So it's like, if we're creating 1/4 of the sugar in the entire world, people, one state, and people, they compare people dropping dead within 7 to 8 years, similar to on a Jamaican cane field, because a lot of people don't understand because they don't like to talk about slavery at all. But uh, sugar-based slavery, indigo-based slavery, tobacco-based slavery, cotton-based slavery, there are different types of traditions that are associated with these different industries. And in New Orleans, we have a lot in common with the Caribbean because of our climate and because of the type of things that were able to be manufactured here. But it's like,
Yeah,
when you have one state where black people from Africa are in Louisiana, which was at the time a French colony, then it switched to Spanish, then back to French, and then finally became America. But ultimately, I think that you hit the nail on the head. I think it's just a really it's a talking point that I can acknowledge that growing up I never thought much about it. I just thought
right.
to myself, oh, this is their story. This is the way that they tell the American story. But now that I'm a lot more well read and I've given a lot more thought, I'm like, no, please stop saying that, because what it does is it inadvertently feeds into the white supremacist talking point. Because if white people can just start the country at a place where, after the Civil Rights Act and after immigration laws passed that make it easier for people to come here, you start it right there. I think that's a really unfair place to start it, because it doesn't just overlook black people, but it overlooks the indigenous people too. Like, my boyfriend, I told you about him before. He has African, Haitian, but also he has Chitimacha in him. Chitimacha was the
Yeah,
predominant tribe in New Orleans before colonizers arrived, and they actually made up about 70% of the population before colonization, and a lot of them were actually enslaved and put onto plantations with our people. So a lot of them are like either killed or mixed into the broader Creole mixture. But I look at it like New Orleans used to be called Bulbancha.
right.
Bulbancha was a Chitimacha term that meant land of many tongues. And I always thought that that was cool, that it used to be a place where they celebrated differences, where they didn't say, "Oh, you talk different, get out of here." It was more like, "Oh, you talk different? Well, try to tell me what it
Yeah,
is you're saying. Like, I'll do trade with you. I'll talk to you." And I kind of thought that was such a beautiful culture. And then after it becomes New Orleans, that's gone. Then everyone different. And the white people are even on the record in New Orleans of being mean to others. They didn't even want white people from Haiti. They were
right.
like, after the Haitian Revolution, they were like, well, they literally at one point made them sit on a boat for weeks. And they were talking about in the newspaper, like, we don't really want them to get off the boat. They were scared of their slaves. They said, even though some of them are slave owners, they have Haitian slaves. And Louisiana had passed the statute where they were not allowing Haitian slaves to come here after the Haitian Revolution, because they didn't want people from there communicating with us. Now, granted, in 1811, we had the German Coast Uprising, the largest slave revolt in U.S. history. Like, what they tried didn't work, because the person who started that revolution, Charles Deslandes, he actually was an enslaved person from Haiti. So it's like an enslaved person did come to the United States and start this. And
Yeah,
one
so
other thing I learned this week. You're gonna be proud of me. So I was looking at the 1526, the slaves that came then. And guess what I found out? It's so cool. So it was 100 people, right?
yeah.
And guess what they did when they came here? They said,
I
fuck that
know.
shit.
Tell
Is it
tell
for
the story.
they
Yeah, tell it.
they literally rebelled. They rebelled against them within weeks, and they literally ran off into the forest. And the white people complained. They're like, the Africans went into the forest, and we never saw them again. And we know they they met up with those indigenous tribes, and they became some of the first maroon communities in the United States. And so I think it's kind of crazy because no one, when we started at 1619, we don't get the truth that the first enslaved people actually won. I mean,
Yeah,
imagine if that's the way it was told, as from a story of resistance where our resistance was successful. I thought that kind of made me feel good. Like
yeah,
the first people y'all tried this on, it did not work. It did
I
not
mean, the Spaniards had to flee because of that, because they couldn't do
run.
anything. Right. So
Yeah,
they couldn't operate. But one of the things you mentioned was about how, slaves were treated as commodities. And, when the Britain and the US, they abolished the slave trade first, and then they waited
right.
decades to abolish slavery. That's because a lot of people's wealth were tied into
That's
the
right.
slaves they owned. So, there's somebody mentioned something about insurance companies were the second largest business that surpassed slavery. Insurance was making a killing off of
Yeah,
slave. So if they had abolished slavery at the same time they abolished the slave trade, they would have
right.
destroyed the economy because the economies were being held up by slavery. It would have
It was
completely.
yeah, it was wholly dependent, and that's why the South has never economically recovered from slavery. Not just
Right,
in terms of black people, because there is that racial wealth gap, but even white Southerners fare a lot worse because they never economically recovered from losing free enslaved people, and that's why they created Jim Crow because they economically needed to be able to control black labor force. That's why they passed anti-vagrancy laws to be able to arrest as many black people as they want. And there's a loophole in the 13th Amendment that says if you're convicted of a crime, of any crime, then you could be sentenced to involuntary servitude. So that's how convict leasing started, by them saying, you know what, these black people are free and we can't have that. We need them to work. And so I guess that when it goes back to what we were saying about this nation not being built by immigrants, it's like when we talk about how this country was actually built, we understand that it was built off of slavery and labor exploitation. And
absolutely.
that and I feel like also what he said, even though that comment didn't get as much attention because I studied meritocracy, I thought that was important. That he said that anyone that works hard can be successful in this country because that's not true for black people. That's not true for Latino people. That's not true for indigenous people in this country. I'm
Mm,
talking about in terms of what the statistics show.
right. I mean, I've seen I know a lot of white dudes that work their ass off their whole life, and they're not billionaires. They work 10
Right,
times, 100 times harder than any billionaire, but they're not billionaires.
right.
They're struggling to get by in retirement, and, and I know we've gone over an hour, which is not
Yeah, but that's
uncommon
okay
for us
for
2 when we're
us.
talking, but, one of the other things that people don't know, and you mentioned the Creole and Haiti, and this always reminds me of that. Like, a lot of people look at Haiti and be like, "Oh, the West oppresses Haiti because, they revolted, abolished slavery, overthrew their slave masters." But what people don't also realize is that Haiti funded, Simon Bolivar, who liberated 9 countries in South America from Spanish rule, and also led the charge to abolish slavery using Haitian money. Like,
Right.
Haitians funded that.
They made Haitians pay reparations. Like make it
Right.
make sense.
It's ridiculous, and, when we get into the conversation about reparations, they've given indigenous people some reparations. It's a drop in the bucket to what they're owed.
Right. That's
Jewish
true.
people
Because
got
when I
Jew
looked it up, it was such a small amount.
Yeah, Jewish people got reparations. Why aren't black people getting reparations? We're talking
And
about
also,
billions of dollars
And
that were.
also, this is what I noticed too. When I met up with the organization, the activists, they were saying that the same area they're trying to put that plaque, that they actually have a Holocaust memorial, and it was huge. And what I thought was interesting is, so let me get this right. In New Orleans, the city that during the Confederacy was the most economically viable city in terms of the biggest slave trade took place in this city. And we have a monument to honor the victims of the Holocaust who were not killed here. And
Right.
but not the enslaved people. that like they're so focused on trying to make amends for something that they did not do. My great grandfather fought in the war. He fought against Nazis. He still came here and was harassed. And the same thing with my great uncle. It's like they fought overseas against Nazis. They came home and their houses were bombed by the Klan. They burned crosses in the yard. They lynched us. And so
let's
yeah,
let's
it's
face
a
it.
resentment. It's a resentment I have about it.
Let's face it. The Holocaust and stuff were white Europeans that happened to be
And that's
Jewish.
what it is. That's
Right.
what it is. See, that's where Hitler messed up because Hitler modeled a lot of his system off of other, uh, you know, systems such as Jim Crow and
Right.
slavery. He did say that the one drop rule was too much for him. But I would argue that even though I've written about that, it's like even that kind of statement is a little misleading because ultimately any system of discrimination is going to be created based off the original characteristics of the people you are oppressing. And Jewish people, you cannot tell if someone's Jewish simply from seeing them,
Right.
unless they're wearing like a traditional garb, or unless they're even if they're in a synagogue. Like I volunteered at the Jewish Community Center before growing up in New Orleans, and not everyone that worked there was Jewish. Not everyone there that went there and used the pool was Jewish. So even if you were to attack the Jewish Community Center, you could never be sure that you're only hurting Jewish people. And it's like with Black people, and particularly with Afro Latinas, like the you can see us, and that's the form of our discrimination. So that's why we had the one drop rule. Then it's not like Hitler was nice and that's why he didn't do the one drop rule. It just didn't make sense because even though we refer to Jewish as an ethnicity, ultimately that's a religion,
Right.
and you can become Jewish. Like if I were to, there are Black people that are Jews. Like you can marry someone and become a Jewish person, and so
I
as
say
a
that.
result,
I say that all the time. Are Latino
yeah,
Jews not
yeah,
Jews or not Jewish? Are Black
yeah,
Jews not Black? Like what?
right.
How how is Jewish a race? That doesn't make any sense.
Hitler, it's not. It's more like it's a religion that we refer to as an ethnicity because of what happened to them.
Right.
That because it's the Hitler's race science that declared them a race, right? But by any other standard, they're not. And um that's why for Hitler, instead of using the one drop rule to see, because obviously, what does one drop of Jewish look like? Like you don't nothing, absolutely
Right.
nothing, but a regular white person. So what he did, he said, if you have at least one Jewish grandparent, that is the designation he used. But any system is designed to oppress a certain group of people. Hitler messed up because he saw that the United States was able to commit genocide against indigenous people, to enslave and to terrorize and create a system of segregation to harm Black people. But this is where he fell off. He didn't understand that that was not applicable to white Europeans.
Right.
He made the mistake of thinking, well, America did this, and this country is still like a worldwide darling, a well-respected nation, even though I would argue we shouldn't be. But he saw that America like literally tortures these Black people, and I mean, people still love them. Why won't they love me? Because I'm picking. In other words, he was picking a group to say you're the problem, and he was trying to get rid of that group, but it didn't work because ultimately, white people we're going to protect Jewish people from the simple fact that they look white. Like, like
I
I
mean,
definitely just am not buying that it's an entire race, especially when you look at Israel. The Israelis that are like have colonized the Palestinians. I heard that a lot of them are like basically they are allergic. A lot of them are allergic to olive oil or something like that, and how the trees grow there. So they're like, if you're so indigenous to this land, how
right.
is it that the very things that this land grows, many of you are allergic to? But the truth of it is, a lot of them, like to me, I feel like if Israel wasn't like just like it's just a bad idea. And I would say that it's just as bad an idea as Liberia was for Black people in America. When
Yeah.
Abraham Lincoln wanted Black people to leave America, and a lot of white people did. Some of them were abolitionists. The American Colonization Society, that's what it was called, the ACS, they decided that, they founded Liberia, named that, and the capital is named after President Monroe. So it's a land in Africa that was colonized, and if you look at the history of that country, there was a lot of warring with America as the colony and the surrounding African people who really were indigenous to there. Just because people like myself aren't, we have African ancestry, that doesn't mean that we can lay claim to any land over there.
Right.
You have to have respect for the fact that, yeah, your people might have been forcibly taken from here, but that doesn't give you the right to come and take land. Now you can come and integrate, like just as immigrants come here. Now I feel like certain countries like Ghana, they have systems where they allow Black Americans to come there and integrate into the
Right.
system. But we don't need to have more power than the people that are born there and indigenous to
Right.
that land. I think it's just so disturbing because
It is.
we're told that we're anti-Semitic if we stand up against Israel and say that their policies are committing genocide. But I look at it like they are a cautionary tale for Black people. This is what we have to hope to never let our struggle become. We have to never let our struggle become one that is used to justify harming others for our own safety. Like
Yeah.
it's
I
one
mean, I
thing, it's one thing literal self-defense, but self-defense is not bombing children and bombing hospitals and schools and all this stuff.
yeah, I grew up around, Hasidic Jews. There's a lot of synagogues and temples and stuff in Union City. They have their own schools and all this stuff, and, they were all very anti-Israel. Like, I've talked to a few that were our age and, it didn't say anywhere in their religious teachings that they're supposed to be a nationless people, you
Right,
know? So, the idea that you have some divine right, divine providence over land. Like, you look at the colonization of the United States, and that's where that came from. Like,
right,
everybody, Manifest Destiny was built on the idea that white people had divine providence, the power of God to take over the Americas
right.
and, and to slaughter people and genocide and all these things. And every justification for what Israel has been doing for the last 75 years is an echo of the colonization of the Americas. The Spaniards thought they had got divine right. The Anglos who came to the US thought they had
That religion stuff is dangerous because
it's
it's like
very dangerous.
you sitting up there reading a book and thinking that you're better than other people. And it's like, I'm glad when I was younger, when I was a freshman in college, I went to Loyola in New Orleans, and I took world religion. World religion class taught us about different religions throughout the world, and they were kind of teaching us that lots of different people have their traditions. And by me learning about those, I never had this perception that some were superior to others. And that's kind of what I was telling my friend the other day. I said, I don't really, I mean, I know Christians and stuff in my family and stuff, so it's not like I have a problem with them. I said, the ones I have a problem with are the ones that think it's their duty to convert everyone, because then to me, you're carrying out this colonial project
Right.
that and it's just not right. And
Right.
somebody asked about the abolitionists real quick. They were asking about so the abolitionists didn't basically care about Black people. And I just wanted to clarify that many of the white abolitionists did not support racial equality. They
Right.
supported the abolition of slavery, but they wanted Black people to leave the country. And if you guys want to look it up, it's called, I'm gonna write it down, the American Colonization Society. And Abraham Lincoln was a member, and they believed that they wanted to abolish slavery, but that they did not want Black people to become citizens and have equal rights. They wanted them to leave, and they felt like, they felt that Black and white people could not peacefully share a nation after
Right.
everything that happened. Now, but at the same time, Black people who Lincoln called as delegates, Black people went to the White House, Black men, they rejected Lincoln's offer. That is
Right.
how the vast majority of Black Americans did not go to Liberia. Me and all of us here are not the descendants of the people that tried to colonize Africa. We are descendants of the people that stayed, regardless of the fact that we would not be accepted and that we'd have to fight for our rights here. So there's always been the racists today that say go back to Africa. That is not something new. That is
No.
something that dates right back to Lincoln's mouth. And a lot of people have to understand Lincoln is on the record of saying that he wanted to save the Union. He would have been willing to save the Union if it meant abolishing slavery. He would have been willing to save the Union if it meant maintaining slavery. He just didn't want the Union to break up. That was his number one goal.
Right.
Now, basically the people in the Union, there wasn't enough of them that got drafted to the war. So it was a strategic effort to start allowing Black people who were leaving, many of them were leaving plantations, and enlisting in the Union Army to finally let them fight. But even when they did let them fight, they used them as sacrificial lambs. They put them on the front lines to be slaughtered in positions that the white soldiers knew that they could not win. Um, there's a lot of bad stuff about the Union Army that people should know, but
Yeah.
nothing pales in comparison to the Confederacy. Robert E. Lee, even though people say, oh, he wasn't that much against it. I mean, he wasn't that much for slavery. Not only did Robert E. Lee own slaves, but when they tried to run away, there's documentation that showed that he had them whipped. Not only did he have them whipped, but the actual slave driver who normally whipped slaves did not want to give them as many lashes as General Lee ordered to be given. So he got another white man to whip them. And after he finished whipping them, he put lye and vinegar and all types of acidic stuff in their wounds. So this is somebody, that's what it was, brine, like a type of brine, vinegar. He put that in their wounds. So it's like he literally beat them within an inch of their lives and put, this is stuff you see on a horror movie where
Yeah.
someone cuts you and then makes it worse by pouring something into it. These people in the Confederacy tortured Black people. They were sick. They were economically dependent on an immoral, illogical system. It was never gonna last forever. And Black people engaged in some of this with indigenous people in at least 250 documented enslaved
Yeah.
people's uprisings. So it's like people focus on the Civil Wars, the end all, the be all, who fought to end. But there were so many fights leading up to that. And
Yeah.
I would encourage you, if you want a hero out of all this, make your hero John Brown. I think it's so sad that he had to give his life in this way, that he was killed as a white man for believing that slavery was wrong and that we should not be a country that built off of slavery. He didn't want that to be true about our country. And he fought. And I think it one of the things I read about it was so funny because he would even free people that didn't want to be free, because you have to think about it. A lot of Black people were afraid. They were
Yeah.
afraid that if you leave the plantation, first of all, white people would use more than physical violence. They would also use psychological tactics, such as threatening to separate your family. So if you run away, not only will you have physical scars and this, that, the other, sometimes they would cut off a limb, cut off your ear, maim you, and do these other types of things. But you'd also have to worry about, well, now they might sell your family. You might never see them again, because once again, it's not the internet. You can't just look it up and say, oh, they were sold to the Mr. So-and-so. You will never see them again. And so there was a lot of psychological pain for Black people. And if you want a comparison, I would say read Night by Elie Wiesel. He talks about his experience as a Holocaust survivor. And one of the points that's stuck with me like all these years later is the moment that the American and other troops came to liberate that camp that he was held at. A lot of the Jewish people, they didn't just run away instantly. They kind of were frozen, and many of them were really sad, thinking that now I'm gone, but I lost my entire family. I have nothing. A lot of them were brought to the brink of starvation. So it just was like just the end of slavery, just as the end of the Holocaust wasn't just a smooth thing, like, oh, no longer oppressed. Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
It was not that, and it's not going to be that way for Palestinians. I mean,
Right.
even when the bombs are done and all this is done, like these people are going to be experiencing the harm committed against them for generations.
Right, and that's
Uh,
part of it, the whole, family separation thing, we still use that, these are all products of colonization and imperialism. I saw the cat too.
right. I know.
But
I
yeah.
look like light bulbs.
Yeah.
That's
But
it.
yeah, these are all the products of colonization and imperialism, and, when you see ICE agents, targeting immigrants and tearing families apart and doing it gleefully and laughing about it
Yeah.
and enjoying it, that's where this comes from. When you see Donald Trump wanting to take over Venezuela or Cuba or
Yes.
these are all the same things, and it's about dominion, right? It's
Yes.
about trying to subvert entire societies. Like, right now the United States is openly and willingly starving 10 million of my people in Cuba,
I
like
know.
cutting them and by cutting them off, and like they've been trying to starve them for 65 years, and now that Marco Rubio has the power and Donald Trump is gonna bow to him, and Stephen Miller's in there. They have no qualms about being open about starving people. We watched this country, high-ranking peoples in this government fund a genocide for years now, right, in
Right.
Palestine. They didn't bat an eye. The whole world is outraged about this. They didn't bat an eye. Here we are again. I don't see a lot of Democrats outraged about this. I've seen Rashida Tlaib,
I know.
Ilhan Omar,
It's
you
only
know.
like this. It's like the Squad and like a few others.
Right, right, and
That's
other
it. That's the
Democrats are like, "Yeah, we're blowing up boats. Yeah, this is illegal," but what did they actually do to try to stop it? Nothing, because
right.
in the end, they support this. Here's another thing, right? In 2017 or so, Donald Trump put those maximum pressure sanctions on Venezuela, right? And on
Right.
Cuba. In the 14 years that Chavez was in power, after Hugo Chavez came into power, 1.5 million people left Venezuela.
Right.
Immediately after those 2017 sanctions, that number ballooned from 1.5 million in 14 years to 1.5 million a year, okay? Donald Trump created the migration crisis at our border,
He did. He
right?
did.
And I've asked Democrats over and over again, "Why aren't you using this against Trump?" And at
Right.
the end of the day, I've had 2 consultants tell me, "Because Democrats supported those sanctions." And I was like,
Right.
"Ain't
And
that
see
a
that.
bitch?"
And see that's the problem. See, as a progressive, I feel that our goal, and I feel like too much of the left just said the answer is just to throw our hands up and not vote.
Yeah,
I think I think as a progressive, we should be supporting progressive candidates. We should be exposing people that need to get kicked out of the Democratic Party. We need to stop being afraid of infighting. We need to understand that some things are worth fighting for because I'm old enough to remember when the Democratic Party supported a pathway to citizenship. None of them talk about that anymore.
right.
They act they act like that didn't happen. But it was more than one election cycle too that they were for the Dreamers. Like that's the whole thing. The Dreamers was supposed to be like the start of something else. Like the Dreamers, a lot of people think that just was the end all to be all. That was supposed to be one of the policies that was going to make it easier for people that came here. And that was going to make it easier on the kids that came here. Because obviously, if you're a child, you should not be held, even if you're saying whatever the parents broke the law, which I think the law is dumb. But even if you're saying their parents broke the law, like kids don't know enough to be accused of breaking the law.
Yeah, and I
Like
mean,
it doesn't make any sense. Like
at the end of the day, crossing the border to seek asylum is not illegal.
that's right. And also this is what I try to explain to people too. A lot of the people do go through the process and ICE picks them up at the court date. And also, to your point, it is not illegal for you to seek asylum. And see, the
Right.
problem in the United States is that we have not invested in our immigration court system. So a lot of the people that are seeking asylum don't have their cases like adjudicated. So so it's like the majority of the people that are in the country, it's like if the process was quick and online, like if it was easy as downloading an app, then I think that you wouldn't have a lot of people that were undocumented. But I don't even think undocumented is the right word because it's
It's
like,
not.
just because they don't have like American citizenship doesn't mean they don't have documents. Like I'm an American citizen. If I go to Mexico, am I undocumented? That doesn't make any sense. Like the documentation is my birth certificate, wherever you're from, your birth certificate, all these different things. Like, for us, we have a social security card too. But that's documentation, but it would be no less documentation if you went elsewhere and people coming from Mexico or anywhere they're coming from in South America or even Africa or the Middle East, they're coming to this country with paperwork. Like, stop pretending like
Well,
everyone
it
doesn't
it's
have anything.
it's that plus the fact that they're in the system, which makes them documented, right? They're easy to track
Right.
down, like,
That's
the
true. They
government
are
knows.
documented.
Right. Government knows where they are. The government knows where they're working. The government knows everything about them.
And
So
immigrants pay taxes disproportionately because they can't benefit from as many of the programs that they actually feed into. So if an immigrant family goes to Walmart and they spend $300 and they spend $20, $30 for tax, like all those taxes are going back into the economy to where it's supposed to be. Obviously, if the politicians did the right thing with the money, then that would be making our society better. You
yeah, I
know,
think the Cato Institute just did a recent study, like a few days ago. They just published it talking about um, the immigrant contribution from undocumented immigrants into the tax system, and they were talking about how undocumented immigrants have been paying down our debt.
They have. And you already know we've been in debt since Bush. So
Yeah,
it's like,
we're talking crazy,
since
yeah.
that last fake war.
Right, right, and it's just crazy because, we've all known that undocumented immigrants pay taxes and don't get to
Right,
benefit from the systems they're
right.
paying for, like
Bingo.
yeah, like, Social Security is only solvent because of the tax money that comes from undocumented immigrants who
I
don't.
think the whole immigration system needs to be deconstructed because
Yeah,
ultimately, I
absolutely.
don't think that people like, first of all, we're all human beings. So it's like, it really doesn't matter where you're born. Like, the assumption that someone is a problem because they're not from here is insane. And it's not backed up by research because research indicates that people who are undocumented actually commit crimes at a much lower rate than citizens. And I can understand why, because it's like they don't want to get in any trouble. So as a
Right,
result, they're actually like basically doing the right thing. Like, they're more likely to do the right thing than the people that are from here. And so
right,
it's just not fair to portray them as dangerous or a drain on resources when in reality they put in more than they take.
right, and, like, undocumented immigrants aren't voting either, you know what I mean?
That's right, because they can't.
The last thing an undocumented immigrant wants is contact with law enforcement. That's
Yeah.
why they don't break the law, that's why they don't vote, that's why they don't do
Right.
stupid shit like try to get food whenever they
But
can.
see, New Orleans used to be a sanctuary city, and here's why. Because their rationale here is that even though they may be undocumented from the federal perspective, we don't want anyone to be hurt in New Orleans and feel that they
Right,
can't. Now, don't get me wrong, I can't stand the police and I don't trust them. But if a Latino person that's not born here is hurt, they shouldn't have to live in fear of reporting what happened to them, that y'all are going to take advantage of the fact that they're not documented to harm them even more. Like, imagine if get raped in a bathroom or something and you want to call the police and you're like, I need to tell them what happened. I want justice for what happened to me. And they're like, well, haha, who cares what happened to you? You're going to get deported. And it's like, it's just such an inhumane system because what it does is that means those women are not going to report those rapes. That
right,
means that when those kids get hurt, no one is going to call Child Protective Services because they feel that they're going to be punished just for not being a citizen. So actually, the reason why New Orleans was a sanctuary city is because the way that the previous leadership thought about it is, we keep ourselves safer by not marginalizing them.
right, and being
Marginalizing people makes it dangerous for them. It just, it's no reason for it.
right, and at the end of the day, being a sanctuary city just means that because, like, right now, here in Houston, we're seeing this a lot. We're not never really been a sanctuary city, but if somebody gets in a car accident or gets pulled over or calls the cops and they look Latino, cops are calling ICE.
Oh my, and see, that's the part. So now
Right,
they've
but
created
being a
very society
sanctuary
people were afraid would be created, has been created,
right,
and it is
so
implemented.
right, so being a sanctuary city just means your cops aren't gonna call ICE on somebody who was
They're not
who's
snitching.
a
They're
victim.
not
Right,
snitching. Right.
right, because 'cause they're
Bingo.
already a
Bingo.
victim, and then
Bingo.
right, and it's just crazy, like, you see all these, like every time Donald Trump talks about, "Oh, there's drop in crime in DC," I'm like, "It's probably not a legitimate drop in crime, it's just people aren't reporting crime because they're
That's
scared
right.
to."
They're scared. And so and so this is how you can tell they're not really in, as much as they say law and order, they're really just going to say whatever it takes to justify
Right,
harming
right,
people. Because if you want a society where people feel more safe, then you can't make them afraid of communicating with representatives of the city and of the government. And like calling ICE, it's like, I don't know, like you said, I think it's just a lot of things are gonna not go reported because, and it's the same thing with black people. I mean, I can't tell you how many bad things have happened to me and people I know where we did not call the police
right,
because we know that when they come, they're gonna make it worse on everyone.
right, I don't call the cops for that reason.
Everyone.
Yep,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't
But
call the
I
cops
feel like
for that.
with the targeting immigrants, like they make it even worse for them. And of course, Donald Trump lied. Remember, he said he's just gonna go after gang members. Well, that's what they say about black people too. And then they bust
Yeah,
everyone up. Everyone gets bust up the head. But yeah, they said they were gonna go after gang members. And one of the ladies they deported from New Orleans, she actually was one of those older women that cooked for a lot of different people. And like when I tell you she had like a big old kitchen and she was European, but she was a little dark skinned, like olive colored. And she just would cook for everyone. Like literally she was retired and she would just cook plates and give it to people and do all this stuff. When I tell you they got rid of her, you know what I'm saying? Like it did make she had been in New Orleans for over 30 years.
That's
You
just
know, it did
crazy.
this is her home. She was here for Katrina. If they
Yeah.
live here for Katrina, that's about as New Orleans as it gets.
Right.
Because you endured the worst thing that we've endured in our lifetime in this city. You were here for that. I just it breaks my heart, and I know my mama said that too, in terms of how Latino people helped us to rebuild the city after Katrina, and now they're being taken away. Like they had this one area they used to have really good food trucks. Years ago, they only had one food truck right there, and they had the best tacos. To me, food trucks have the best tacos. Like, forget about some of these restaurants; it's food trucks. I don't
Yeah,
know why.
no.
It's just so
Street
damn good.
tacos street tacos are the best. They are absolutely the best,
And
100%.
over the course, and it was right by Lowe's. Now, over the course of time, this is what I saw. They upgraded the truck. A couple of years later, I see 2 or 3, 4, 5 trucks. I see it became like a community. Like they right by
Yeah.
the store, and they would hang out by Lowe's because people will come there and they'll need help. Like say if it's an old lady and she's like, I need to replace the door, and I need help. One of them might offer her help.
Yeah.
And then Latino people are more willing to work with you, whereas white people are like 10 grand or nothing. Whereas
Yeah.
Latino people were like, well, how much you got? Well, I'll see, come up with this much and we'll work together. It's like it's more like they're gonna work with you to try to solve the problem. They're not gonna just shit on you and be like, aha, you're poor, you don't have good credit. Who cares if your stuff gets fixed? They work with people. And I felt like and after Katrina, they suffered a lot of hate crimes because people were attacking Latinos because back after Katrina, everyone was carrying cash. So these guys would get paid $200 to $300, $400 a day cash. So there were a lot of incidents where they found Latino men that were workers killed in put in abandoned homes in New Orleans. So it's like we have been through a lot
Yeah.
before all of this, and it's like I see the Latino community growing in New Orleans, like in terms of like the schools and everything like that. Like we always had a lot of Latinos in Jefferson Parish, not so much in New Orleans, but now in New Orleans proper, we're seeing more neighborhoods, more Latino people in that area that I'm telling you about with the food trucks. So on the other side of the food trucks, there's like a truck stop. And like they used to be playing dice there, like just chilling, cooling, right? But they never was bothering nobody. It's like maybe it'll be like 50, 60 of them. Like I said, it started off with just a few people, but within a couple of years, it was a lot of people hanging out over there. And they would just be having fun, chilling. And like they weren't making it wasn't like loud, if that makes any sense. Like it wasn't like, how when black people we come, we bumping the loud music. It wasn't really like the loud music. Like it just kind of seemed like a third space for them. Like they
Right.
were just hanging out there, some people to work, some people to do the food truck stuff, some of them were construction workers, and a lot of them there was affordable housing in the area, so a lot of them were able to make that their home. And now all of them are gone. Like when you go over there, there's not even one food truck. This was like this for over 10, 12 years. There's not one Latino food truck over there. None of those people that were there are there. I don't know where they are. And then there's this clinic that I've gone to where it's a lot of Latino people that go there, and they actually had to close down sometimes um, to basically protect the people because they didn't want the ICE to come over there. And basically they give away free diapers and stuff like that for people that need it and stuff. But they were concerned that the government was going to use that as an opportunity, like the women trying to get the diapers and try to take them away from their family.
Yeah, and it's just so heartbreaking to see that. And we have Latino communities here in Houston, obviously, and they're huge. And,
Yeah, y'all big.
and
Y'all
we also
big.
right, and we also have, like, like I was saying earlier, the mix of Black and Latino communities, like, in the 5th Ward and the 3rd Ward and stuff
Mhm.
like that, and, like, it's just crazy because again, Black folks here didn't get the memo about this isn't our fight, but yeah, like, everybody's protecting their neighbors for that reason. Like, people are afraid
Right.
of, like, people disappearing. Like, you're gonna like what you just described is,
It's
a
terrifying
small
because I genuinely wonder where they are. Like, I genuinely
right.
wonder, like, because they were part of our community, and, like, I hope that they're more so laying low, but I don't know because
Right.
for a while they didn't hack them up. For a while they were good, but the last time we went over there, when I tell you they're all gone.
Yeah, and it blows me away because, like, I've seen so, for example, like, Cuba willingly takes repatriations, right? When somebody gets deported, send the plane back here, don't send them somewhere else. The US has sent probably half the Cubans they've deported to Mexico. For what?
And that's another problem.
And, like, the
They are
Cuban government
deporting people to places they've never been
right,
before, and that's not okay.
Cuban government can't find these people, and they're
And see,
actively
how do we know that they're alive? Y'all are saying you
right.
sent them to Mexico. Give us proof of these people. This is kidnapping.
Yeah,
This is, and that's another thing I wanted to say about human trafficking. Donald Trump and the Republicans lied, and they said they cared about human trafficking that accompanied the drug trade. But if you cared about human trafficking, then why are you, for one, like, why is the government itself engaged in human trafficking? And also, by you taking away our sanctuary cities, you're making it to where if someone is getting human trafficked, they can't even contact the police because y'all are gonna put the who knows where you're gonna send them. So that's not fair. When I went to New York, I saw in the bathroom stalls because we don't have that out here. We have human trafficking out here, but there's a bigger campaign up there to acknowledge that it's happening. And I noticed in a lot of the restaurants I went to, they have a phone number in there
yeah,
that you could call and tell them if somebody is holding you against your will or doing certain things financially, holding you to where you can't escape and that sort of thing. And I look at it like with the anti-immigration raids, like most of the people getting trafficked are gonna be the people that aren't documented. So what the administration has did is he's made it easier for human traffickers because now these people are gonna feel like, well, damn, now I can't even report my kid. And like I can't do anything. Like
right, I
this is
mean
ridiculous.
right, and I mean, the administration pardoned, what, 1,500, 1,600 violent criminals from January 6th, 2 drug
White
smugglers
people get to beat the police upside their head.
right, and they pardoned 2 drug smugglers. If human trafficking is a byproduct of drug smuggling and you really cared about it, the last thing you're gonna do is pardon 2 drug smugglers of the
He
biggest
pardoned the
cartel.
drug smuggler, and then he went and stole the president from Venezuela. You stole him under the premise that he was guilty of drug trafficking, but the week before you had pardoned people that were not even just accused, convicted drug criminals. Like,
Right,
and so it's just it's just sad because I feel like the Democrats, I just want more. I think that they think that because they don't have the power, we're supposed to be satisfied with them not doing much. But
right,
I don't care if it ever gets passed. I want you to reintroduce the George Floyd Justice of the Police Act. I want you to reintroduce the pathway to citizenship. I want you to fight. And I feel like if you're getting paid, you need to be fighting every day. Y'all are getting paid salary. Y'all not getting paid by the hour to work for Congress. So you need to be putting a certain amount of resources together. And not only do you need to be uh, trying to push for this legislation, but you need to be on the news every other night saying what you're going to do. In other words, it's almost like we've given up with negotiating with the Republicans so bad that we don't even ask them. We don't even ask them anymore if we could pass this. And it's like, I get it. They're going to say no, but if I'm not a politician, if that's going to be your job, then your job is to push the issue and not just to lecture us about, oh, you should have voted for me. Well, baby, I did vote for you.
right,
So first of
right,
all, you're talking to the wrong one. I did my part. Now you go do your part. Because
right,
in the South, I've not, nobody I've ever voted for. My vote for president has never counted because of the Electoral College.
right,
Because the people in the state, most of the people in Louisiana are Republicans. So even though I vote for the Democrat, that does not get counted in terms of determining who will become president. So it's not even fair to just keep picking on the voters and saying, do this, do that. We're doing what we can do. Don't fucking run for Congress. if you don't
Right.
want to do this job and you don't want to be knocking on people's door. I don't give a fuck. Knock on mansion, not mansion. What is it? What
Fetterman.
McConnell? Knock on McConnell's door and be
Yeah.
like, get your ass out that wheelchair, and we need
And
to have a fucking conversation.
that's
Like,
the thing. That's the thing too. Even when Republicans weren't in power, they found a way to block things. Like they blocked Obama's Supreme Court pick. That's what gave Donald
right?
Trump 3. And it's just
They
ridiculous
gutted.
that
They gutted the Voting Rights Act. With what's that case? Shelby v. Holder.
yeah, yeah.
And that's what allowed the Republicans to pass hundreds of voter suppression laws in the aftermath.
Yeah, I mean, we've had in Texas alone, I think it's 22 in the last 7 or 8 years, voter laws, and only 3 were not considered to be voter restriction laws.
And see, that's the thing people got to understand. Like, the part of the Voting Rights Act of 1965 that the Supreme Court gutted is they took away the obligation for them to seek pre-clearance. So
Mhm.
states in which less than 50% of the people were registered to vote and it was and had a history of discrimination were required to ask the federal government for pre-clearance they decided to before they decided to change any state-based voter laws. So without that pre-clearance standard, that is why we see them passing so many
Yeah,
restrictive laws, because that is what the Voting Rights Act was supposed to be protecting us from. So a lot of people haven't caught on to the fact that they are deconstructing the efforts of the Civil Rights Act, and unfortunately, they've been very effective.
yeah, yeah, they went after the Voting Rights Act, and I think, the Civil Rights Act is next. They've made that pretty clear. They're trying to go after marriage equality now, like all these anti-trans so-called think tanks that are really hate groups have all come
Right.
together. There's like 40 something of them that are going after marriage equality. Something Clarence Thomas talked
Creepy.
about getting rid of, which is weird.
With his
Right, right.
white wife, but don't
It's
but
just
it's getting weird.
it is. It's just
Conservatives
crazy.
thinks that nothing applies to them. So here's the bottom line. He knows that even if, let's say, for example, if, gay marriage and interracial marriage were stricken, I don't think that Clarence Thomas would himself be impacted, because, see, that's what it is to be an elite. You can pass
Right,
whatever you want. For example, Donald Trump, he has 30 something felonies. You think that stopped him from doing anything? So it's like when the law is selectively applied, it loses all value.
right,
And I definitely think that these people are doing this because they don't think that they don't think they would be affected. And you notice how they come after these marginalized groups. They come after Black people. They come after immigrants. They come after LGBTQ, trans people. They come after people that the majority has already kind of turned their back on. And that's who they choose to attack, because they're like, oh, they're not going to say anything. It's just a Black person getting killed. Oh,
right,
they're not going to say anything. Oh, that's just an immigrant. Oh, don't worry about that. It's always just don't worry about that. And if it's a white person, oh, they were a terrorist. Don't worry about that. It's always a fucking excuse. You
yeah,
know what I
and I
mean?
mean
And
that.
I can't wait till people are tired of the excuses.
Right, and that's also what kinda justifies them or rationalizes them coming after any type of organization, cross-racial or political lines or any kind of coalition building. The
Right.
more they keep us fragmented, the easier it is to take our power. And, because white people are a majority in most places, it makes it that much easier. And, the there's no real question as to why the most voter suppressed states are former Confederacy states, right?
I
There's no
know.
there's no
Texas,
question as to why.
Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, Florida, South Carolina, like all those damn
Right.
slave states, all the
Even
Confederacy.
right, even Texas, who joined the Confederacy very late, is nowadays considered the most voter suppressed state in the country, and I can see it because, you see the election turnouts and how many people stay home, and a lot of it is because they feel like their vote doesn't matter, or they think they can't vote, or they don't know what
Yeah.
the new rules are, and
Right.
part of passing all these laws is to create confusion, to, create more disenfranchisement, create more, doubt about whether the elections are valid or not. So, when Harris ran, and the other problem is Democrats basically in 2024, Democrats conceded Texas before they even tried to take it. They were just like, "We're not gonna win that, don't even bother." And the reality is we had a decent turnout, but, millions of people stayed home. Something like close
Right,
to a little over 1,000,000 and somewhere in between 1,000,000 and 1.5 black people stayed home. A total of, like, 8,000,000 voters in general stayed home. And that's where that comes from. That comes from the idea that, like you said, you voted, I don't know, however many elections, always voted for a Democrat, your vote never counted.
right,
That's where that comes from.
right,
And that's where when federal elections roll around, the turnouts are higher, but they're not high enough. And when
right.
midterm elections roll around, the turnout is just ridiculously low. The recent elections that we just had, something like 10%, 15% of eligible voters actually turned out. And that's just scary to think about, that people are that disenfranchised by the system that they just don't even bother.
Yeah. And also voting, like, I remember when I was younger, like, sometimes it's hard if you don't make a plan to vote because you'll be working. So I remember
Right,
working in the French Quarter and I'm like, "Oh, I gotta vote today." Sometimes if you work for the right person, they'll let you go. They'll be like, "Oh, okay, go vote, come back." I'm like, "Okay, bet." But if you
right,
work for the wrong person, they're not gonna let you go vote. So and I think that I hope future generations change the way voting. And what I mean is, like, I think that even though of course people are gonna complain about security this and security that, I think it has to be digital. Because I think that a significantly larger share of the American population would vote if it was easy. A lot of people are not going to go on a website, look at their location, and it could change. And then go to that place during this hour to that hour. I mean, we just simply don't live that type of life anymore. If you got a notification in your phone and said, who you voting for? Bing, done. 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 And I hope that I support future generations because, like I said, it's not something that can happen overnight. But I definitely think the way we cast ballots has to change because the way that we cast ballots, it disincentivizes people from wanting to engage. And you're right, people are disenfranchised. They believe that a lot of people believe that nothing will change. Like even when I was meeting with the black elders that I did meet with, some of them and like I said, I support a little bit of that too. Like they support this idea of New Africa in terms of black people in America being allocated the land that was originally set aside for us after slavery and having our own economic, political, financial independence. But of course, any type of secession, like white people are not, like we've learned this, white people are not giving up their land. What I try to get them to understand is I would support a black state, but ultimately, right now our kids are attending schools where they're getting half as much funding as the white kids. They are not being given equal opportunity. So I feel like I can't abdicate my responsibility to participate in the system because decisions are being made on our behalf.
right,
I always compare it to a pizza party. Let's say at school, if the teacher said, okay, let's vote for Christmas, you get to order one thing, pizza, Chinese, or fried chicken. And I say that because that happened to us. Now, if you do not vote, then if we end up getting fried chicken and you wanted pizza, I don't want to hear it. Hush,
right,
hush.
right,
Because your opportunity equals this. Now, keep in mind, you could not vote, but the decision is going to be made anyway. And if you do not vote, then that means the decision was made without your input. So are
right,
you comfortable with allowing others? Because keep in mind, like you said, the 10% voted, right? That means that 10% is basically representing the rest of the
everybody.
90% of the constituency that did not vote. So when you do not vote, you are advocating your choice to people like me that do vote, or
Right,
anybody that does vote. You not voting does not destroy a system. A system could only be dismantled if we actually come together and create another system. And I think people often ignore that you need economic power. So freedom is never just given, it's demanded. But we need to go deeper. In order for you to make a demand, you have to have power. So we need collective power, whether it was going to be in the Democratic Party or some third party. And with Black people being only 13% of the population, I would argue that having an only Black party doesn't meet the needs either. It maybe does that on a local level in terms of some local governments and cities and stuff like that being uh taken over. Like, say if it's a majority of black people, they want a representative and they pick this person, that's fine.
Right.
But in terms of, if you're 13% of the population, you want to get legislation passed, you need the majority of citizens. And lucky for us, white people are going to be the minority. So that means if black people can work with a share of the Latinos, a share of the white people, a share of like a slice of everyone, that is our coalition. That's what we used to call the Obama coalition.
Right.
And that's what we need to pass reparations. Because first of all, not all black people support it, because not all black people are educated in these matters. So
Right.
even if all 13% of black people in America supported reparations, that still wouldn't be enough to pass it. So I have no problem with working with strictly black groups. But however, I don't believe in abdicating political power. And I think that that's why the left is so weak in this country, is because a lot of them do not engage in electoral politics. So even though they
Right.
have these right ideas about how society should work. They believe in Medicare for all. They support reparations. They support land back movements. They support a pathway to citizenship, but they don't vote. So kind of
Yeah.
who gives a damn? Who gives a damn if you support us in theory, if when we get to the ballot box, you're unwilling to support the candidates that can at least strategize? I feel like even if Kamala was in office, ICE was going to still exist. There were going to still be people separated from their families. There were going to still be black people killed by the police. But I do believe we would have representation that was willing to sit down with some of our civil rights
Right.
organizations and work towards solutions. Right now, your solution is not between an evil person and a fucking perfect person. It's about making a strategic, pragmatic decision. Think about with Lincoln. Black people supported Lincoln, and Lincoln was on the record saying he did not believe in racial equality. He did
Right.
not believe that a black person should hold office. He did not believe that a black person should have the right to vote. We supported Lincoln not because he's the perfect angel, white savior. No, we supported him because that was politically advantageous. You know what I
Right.
mean? And that's the part
Right.
that people are kind of they're online and they're being purist and they're saying, "Oh, well, we can't vote for this person because they're not perfect." For example, Jasmine Crockett did not take APAC money, and they came up with a new excuse not to like her. They
Right.
said, "Oh, well, she knows some of them, so she might as well be doing it for free." And it's kind of like, well, see, now you're exposing that you didn't have any standards. If the
Right.
standards was don't take money from APAC, but it's like you keep changing the standard to excuse not supporting Black and Latino candidates.
Right. Like,
There's going
if
to be
we
an excuse.
right, if we elected Harris, it would have been, mitigating harm, right? Like, you know that it would have been easy to put enough pressure on her and to start
Exactly.
cracking down on ICE, to stop doing
Exactly.
certain things, to,
To
follow the
reintroduce George Floyd just as the police, and
right,
and all these different
something.
things. And
Right, there's
also Kamala, one of the strategies that I saw her implement because they were criticizing her so much, and that's what made me look into it. Because I'm like, no one ever talks about a vice president this much. But one of the things she was doing in South America that I thought was cool is she was trying to kind of engage in having positive relationships with countries in South America, because she felt like helping those countries economically or engaging
right,
in mutually beneficial relationships would make it to where not as many people would have to flee those nations, because there is famine and there's all types of bad things that are happening that are driving people away from South America. So if we could actually care about South America and address these nations with dignity and respect, then their people wouldn't be
right,
as likely to be forced to come here. Because people just think America's just so great. You think people are freaking walking through a desert to come here because it's so great? They're desperate.
right.
And
And a lot
we
of
have to acknowledge that.
right, a lot of that desperation is our fault, like
Yes.
these maximum pressure sanctions we talked about
Yes.
earlier. So, so for the 30 million Venezuelans that stayed in Venezuela, they're not gonna be friends with the same people who tried to starve them for the last 10 years. For
Right.
Cubans who are still on the island, they don't want how can you starve people for decades and then expect them to be your friends? Expect them to greet you,
Right.
welcome you with open arms. It just doesn't work that way. It's common sense.
Most of my life, America has been putting the squeeze on Cuba.
Yeah.
Keeping the people poor. I was just talking to my boyfriend about that last night because we were talking about different economic systems, and I was saying, Cuba provides healthcare for the people. They provide certain standards that we don't have in the United States. I said, but because America is capitalist and just like wants to portray their form of government as a failure, they're intentionally making their people suffer.
Right.
And that's not to say that all the politicians there are perfect, because no matter what country you go to, there's always going to be bad
Right.
faith actors, especially when money's involved. But I would say that like they just Cuba gets a bad rap completely. It
Yeah,
it,
and I
it
mean,
really sick.
with all the like, I rarely ever find myself agreeing with the Cuban government at all, but you look in the Cuban Constitution, there are laws in there specific to racial justice that have been there
Right,
since Castro desegregated the island. And then in
right,
2022, they held a referendum, which means the people voted to give
right,
trans rights, gay marriage, allow gay families to adopt kids. Like, they codified all these laws, and the people voted for them, and they had, like, an 80 something percent turnout, and when it comes to international organizations, they look at voter turnout to try to determine if the people support their government, and Cuba, with an 80 to 90% voter turnout, consistently says that they support their government. And most of the Cubans I talk to are looking for reforms, not overthrow the government, destabilize civil.
right,
Nobody wants civil war, right? Nobody wants,
right.
except the United
America
States, of
seems to
course.
always want civil war.
Yeah,
With
the
every
United
every
States.
it wants to start. I think that we all know that this has been a long-term goal of the CIA to um, politically and economically disenfranchise South American countries. Like
Yeah,
and so it's like, just like with the whole Contras, like how the CIA was funding wars. They were basically giving money to militant groups that wanted to overthrow the government. Like, imagine if China did that here. Imagine if China like
right.
broke bread with the leftists here and was like, "Go get them."
Yeah, right. Here's a
That's
bunch of
so
guns.
funny. Get them, get them. But that's the thing. Psychologically, it's not impossible. But one thing I noticed is like in terms of behavior, the far right and authoritarianism is more so associated with violence than the left. So a lot of times people like do this false equivalency. They're like, "Oh, you guys are extreme on the left, you guys are extreme on the right." It's like, okay, so the left version of extreme is you having food to eat, you having a place to live, you having health care, you being able
Right,
to age and retire with dignity. The Republicans' side of extreme is, hey, all you colored people and women, no more voting for you, no more fun for you,
right,
no more rights for you. It's like
right,
that. It's wrong to falsely equivocate because their version of like Oasis is us being under their foot, whereas the left doesn't. That's why, even though I'm a socialist, I don't have a problem with communists, because to me, they don't necessarily their ideas about society are not the problem. It's capitalists that are a problem, because communists are never going to concede to this idea that it's okay that some people starve, and neither will
right,
socialists.
right.
These other economic systems get a bad rap when in reality it is through capitalism that we had slavery. It is through capitalism that Jim Crow was maintained. So capitalism is the one that's killing us, and yet they're scared of a system in which we will all be able to eat and have a house. Like, okay, this doesn't make any it doesn't make any sense to me. And meanwhile, last year I paid over $6,000 in federal taxes.
Yeah,
How do you think that feels when you see the government bomb black people in Nigeria on Christmas, or or and something my sister-in-law was telling me about how some of the immigrants that they dropped in the water.
yeah.
When I tell you, that's straight out of a horror film. Somebody dropping you in the water?
That's right out of Pinochet's, book in Chile, and he was a
Exactly.
far right dictator who, a lot of his political opponents were tossed out of helicopters into the ocean.
I know, and what I find so disturbing is I think that white America is in worse condition than ever, because ultimately, even though white people are annoying with their respectability politics, I don't even feel that they have that anymore, because y'all support a pedo president. You support a pedophile and someone who raped Gene Carroll, who's a rapist, you know, and who's a failed businessman, who's a felon, who hurts people, who started a fake university. who like literally makes fun of disabled people. Like,
Yeah.
so I feel like for the rest of my life, and I'm 37, so it might be a while because my grandmothers, they live into their 90s. So you have to
My
put up with
dad
us for a
just
while.
turned my dad just turned 92, so y'all stuck
So
with
you
me.
already know y'all stuck with us, and y'all y'all messed up because I feel like Black people need to link up with the Latinos that care about dismantling white supremacy, because
Yeah,
ultimately that coalition, if we take out 13%, and we don't even need all Latinos, because some people get bogged out on this fact that, oh, well, you have racism amongst Latinos. It's like, duh, but listen to the whole plan. So we don't need every Latino. Even if we had 40% of Latinos,
that's a
that's
lot.
a big coalition. We
Yeah,
don't even need and we didn't even need all white people to win with Obama. Only 36 to 38% of white people supported Obama. So that's letting you know that if we believe in coalition building, and I always tell people this does not mean abandoning anything. I'm not abandoning my pursuit of reparations to work with Latino people.
right.
In fact, the Latino people I'm working with, such as you, support reparations. And I feel like that's what we need. We need more of an acknowledgement about the things that we could work on together. Like, I support immigrants' rights, groups, and I feel like the people that I work with are willing to support those too. And I feel like at the next meeting, I'm gonna bring up with the elders, I'm gonna ask, because we didn't get into the ICE thing. I wanted to get into it because they're a group of Black people that do believe in internationalism, you know.
Right.
And so I wanted to ask them, what do you got? Like, I want to hear what you guys have to say, because I don't, these are people that understand the harms of capitalism, sexism, racism. So I want to know if what they think about this, especially given that we're celebrating Marcus Garvey, his contributions, and he was an immigrant of this country. And so I'm hoping that I could find more Black people that are not just like saying I don't hate immigrants, but are willing to really work um, with other folks so that we can try to make progress. Like, I definitely think we need a resistance, and I don't feel like all the Democrats are against this. I feel like you have to look at the votes. Like, you really have to
Right.
look at the votes, and you have to look at the legislation they introduced to kind of see who's on our side and who's not. To me, by being Black, my litmus test is reparations. I'm looking to
Right.
see, are you listed as if you're a representative, are you listed as a co-sponsor on HR 40? In other words, are you willing to, even in this uncertain time, to put your name on it? That to me is somebody I'm more willing to support than
Heard that.
some of the
Yeah.
others. Like,
Right. I agree.
I wonder, the Democrats, it seem like, and I hate to pick on them because they're not like obviously the main villain here, but I think we pick on them because we understand that if they did change, how powerful it would be for all of us.
We want them
Like,
to
if,
do better. We want them to
yeah,
do better, and that's the
we
thing.
want to resist it. We want a party that really represents the
Right.
resistance.
Right, right. Like, obviously Republicans right now are the problem,
Yeah,
and they
they
typically
are.
have been the problem.
Yeah,
But, you know, when like Cory Booker was all giddy about Marco Rubio at the State Department and everybody voted for Marco Rubio, like, no, no, no. That's not what we want to see. We don't want to see you emboldening the Trump administration. We don't want you see you emboldening Marco Rubio talking about all this great foreign policy experience, which isn't really that
yeah,
great. And now we have
it's
him
not.
doing this. Now we have him doing this because even Democrats were celebrating his appointment. And they painted him as the rational guy. He's not a rational guy.
No, he's
Freaking
not.
fascist. Like, come on.
He is.
Yeah, so
We warned them about Fetterman. And here's the thing.
that too,
If
yes.
if America crashes and burns, it's gonna be because they ignore Black people and people
Yeah.
of color. Because, like,
Fuck yes.
everything we told y'all asses would happen has happened. But
And
what
now he's
pisses me
gonna
off is they want to move forward. Now, I think that Democrat, we need to take a moment and acknowledge that everything we say, and like, I want leadership that actually is not scared.
Yeah, I'm there too.
They
I'm there
scared
too.
of Trump. They
And
scared of Trump.
one of the things that annoys me is I feel like they're more afraid of being attacked for what they say. And it's at the end of the
Yes.
day, Republicans are gonna attack you for
No
how
matter
you choose.
what.
Yeah, I mean, they don't care.
Bingo.
They don't care. But anyway, I probably should wrap this up because I got another live I gotta do here in a little while.
Okay, good. I know I robbed you of your free time, but at
No, it's all
least,
good, it's all good. I got the weekend, so but yeah, I'm running
good.
behind on a lot of stuff anyway, but no,
Yeah,
this
me too. I need to get to writing this article, but it's been so long since we talked. Maybe this the first time this year, right?
I believe so,
Like
yes.
in person, like in
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah,
this is
but yeah, y'all. Thank you, y'all. Follow Arturo. Subscribe to his newsletter. I first discovered his writing with us being in a writers group, Writers of His Color, on Medium, and we are so like minded that we spawned a journalistic friendship. And so definitely, if you support me, please support him as well because I
likewise,
really
yeah.
enjoy reading his work.
We're trying to get Allie's profile a little bigger up here, so make sure to follow Allison.
Yeah, support me because I may be cool on other websites, but I'm a stranger. I'm a stranger here. I'm a baby. And and I don't mind following you guys back, but here's the only thing I think. I want you guys to understand. I write about racism on a daily basis. So if that bothers you, don't trigger yourself. Just don't follow. But if you're
Yeah.
comfortable with talking about race, then I'm as sweet as pie. And
Hey,
I actually can bake a good pie.
we had Christina from New Zealand watching today, that's cool.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you so much,
Yeah,
everyone. You guys are awesome, and thank you for joining us for this conversation. We definitely want to hear what you have to say. We were very vulnerable and very honest. Like we talked to each other in front of you guys, how we do on the phone. So
yeah.
hope you guys enjoyed it. And hey, Alexandria, that's my girl. Oh, I think I saw Bumpy in here earlier. Thank you so much, Bumpy and Walter and all the wonderful people. And Zuri, Stevens, thank you so much too. I'm just trying to mention all the people I know. And love
Yeah,
you guys. And
Tom Joad's cool. Yeah, there's a lot of good people here today.
yeah, I see a bunch of good folks. But
Yeah,
let's stay in community with each other the best we can. And we'll see y'all next time. Love you
alright.
guys. Bye.